Καλημέρα σε όλους. Good morning to all. And welcome to our conference, Hydrogen for a Clean Future, Pathways for Cyprus and Beyond. On behalf of the Cyprus Hydrogen Association and the Cyprus Employers Industrialists Federation, OEF, I am delighted to welcome you all. We have policymakers, researchers, industry representatives, experts, all sharing most probably one vision to advance hydrogen as a key pillar in the clean energy transition for Cyprus. Today's discussions bring European and local expertise to explore hydrogen's role in decarbonizing our energy systems and shaping the roadmap for a more sustainable future. On behalf of the two organizers, I would like to extend our welcome to our sponsors, EcoCyprus, Eurobank, Frederick University, Future Fuels, Electricity Authority of Cyprus, EFOS, and Papalinas Group. The conference includes two thematic sessions and a short break between them, and at the end we're going to have a panel discussion with moderated by Dr. Andreas Pulkas. Please note that all presentations will be uploaded to the microsite of the conference and will be shared with you via email, so if you have any, give us your email, please do that in the registration desk in front of the seminar room. Now, to open today's proceedings, I am honored to invite our guests for the opening remarks. Mr. Ketonis is the president of the Cyprus Hydrogen Association, has been one of the driving forces behind the establishment of the association, and one big advocate for hydrogen development in the country. Mr. Ketonis, please join us for your welcoming speech.
Your Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues, it is indeed a pleasure and a privilege to welcome you all to this esteemed gathering, where in the next few hours we shall have the unique chance and opportunity to get briefed and educated further on some more topics about this intriguing substance that everybody's talking about, hydrogen. We have the conviction and foster the hope that this conference, beyond the knowledge sharing on the subject of hydrogen with the wider public, will hopefully entice the state to become more actively and substantially involved in the hydrogen sector and economy, either via legislation or regulation, via incentives to prospective users based on CO2 emission reduction for both producers and users, via tax relief benefits, or via direct financial support for targeted users with high CO2 imprint, such as public transportation and commercial vehicles. And all the above should be based on a conscious and objective political decision. Your presence here today, distinguished guests and colleagues, is a clear indication that the interest in hydrogen, its properties, its uses and importance to the energy sector and to the economy are both real and intense. Considering the status and highly specialized knowledge of our esteemed speakers, I have no doubt that at the end of this event today, we shall all be wiser and more knowledgeable on the subject matter. At this point, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our speakers who have accepted our invitations and traveled from far and wide to present the latest facts and matters about hydrogen. Equally thankful and honored we are, whilst warmly welcoming to the presence of the CEO of Hydrogen Europe, Mr. Yoannis, who responded very kindly to our invitation and took time from his practically busy schedule to be here with us, thus attributing such importance to this event. We're also fondly welcoming the CEO of Hydrogen Ireland, Mr. Paul McCormack, with whom we are looking forward to work closely together to produce a joint agenda for the promotion of hydrogen during the 2026 year of the joint and rotating presidency of Cyprus and Ireland in the European Union. It will be unforgivable omission on my behalf not to mention and express our sincere thanks to our host to this event, the Frederick University, Nicosia, who have so kindly offered their premises to organize and realize this event. So, I do not wish to take valuable time from the real substance of the conference and by continuing to address all our honored guests and participants, So I would ask your forgiveness if I broke the protocol somehow, but rather I would wish, without further ado, to ask all the other speakers and presenters to add their voices to the conference. Thank you very much.
Dear Minister of Energy, Commerce and Industry, dear members of the Parliament, dear former ministers, distinguished guests, honored speakers, dear students and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to Frederick University today for this important conference. I extend a warm welcome to all our participants, both local and international, who have traveled to join us in exploring one of the most transformative energy technologies of our time. We are particularly honored to host this event in collaboration with the Cyprus Hydrogen Association and the Cyprus Employers and Industrialists Federation. Your presence here today underscores the critical importance of hydrogen in shaping our energy future, and I thank you for your commitment to advancing this vital conversation. Frederick University has long been dedicated to excellence in research and innovation, particularly in areas that address the pressing challenges facing our society. Energy transition and decarbonization represent defining challenges of our generation, and we are deeply proud of the significant research contributions our university has made to the hydrogen field. Frederick University is dedicated to advancing hydrogen research and sustainable energy solutions through its academic staff expertise. Our commitment reflects the recognition of hydrogen's crucial role in addressing energy transition challenges and supporting regional sustainability goals. We remain focused on evidence-based contributions to real-world energy challenges facing Cyprus and the broader Mediterranean region. Today's conference brings together an exceptional group of experts, policymakers, and industry leaders who will share their insights on European policy developments, technological advances, and practical applications across multiple sectors. From the role of hydrogen in energy transition to strategies for decarbonizing our energy system, the discussions ahead promise to be both illuminating and actionable. Cyprus, with its abundant solar resources, strategic geographic position, and commitment to renewable energy, is uniquely positioned to play a meaningful role in the emerging hydrogen economy. Events like today's conference are essential for fostering the collaboration, knowledge exchange, and strategic planning necessary to transform this potential into reality. I'm confident that the presentations, discussions, and networking opportunities throughout this morning will inspire innovative thinking and concrete action toward our shared goal of a clean energy future. Once again, welcome to Frederick University, and I wish you all a highly productive and engaging conference.
Thank you, Professor Dimostenos, for university's commitment to innovation and education in the energy transition. We are honored to have with us Mr. Papanastasiou, Minister of Energy, Commerce and Industry, to share the government vision on the energy transition. Mr. Papanastasiou, the floor is yours.
Καλημέρα σε όλους. Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the conference. It is a great pleasure to be here today at Frederick University, joining experts, innovators, and stakeholders who share a common vision for for a sustainable energy landscape. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the Cyprus Hydrogen Association and the Cyprus Employees and Industrialists Federation for organizing this timely event and for their unwavering commitment to advancing our country's hydrogen sector. Today, we stand at a pivotal moment in the global energy transition. The urgency of climate change, combined with recent geopolitical developments, has fundamentally reshaped the energy landscape and intensified the imperative for energy independence and security. The goal of a climate-neutral Europe by 2050 is not merely an aspiration. It is a necessity for future generations. In this context, hydrogen, particularly renewable hydrogen, has emerged as one of the key pillars of Europe's decarbonization strategy, a driver of industrial competitiveness and a future geopolitical asset. The European Union has recognized this through its 2020 hydrogen strategy, the REPowerEU plan, the creation of the European Hydrogen Bank, and the establishment of the European Network of Network Operators for Hydrogen, ENO. It is worth noting that the Ministry of Energy, Commerce and Industry has been actively involved in ENO's foundation from its very inception. When the first meeting took place in January 2024 to discuss ENO's state statutes and initiate the foundational process, Cyprus was among the participants joining this critical European initiative. Today, Cyprus participates as an associate partner in ENO, demonstrating our commitment to being part of Europe's hydrogen infrastructure development from the ground up. This involvement ensures that Cyprus remains connected to the broader European hydrogen ecosystem and benefits from the technical cooperation, knowledge sharing, and coordinated planning that ENO facilitates. Our participation reflects our belief that while we are a small island nation, we must be present at the table where Europe's hydrogen future is being shaped. Ladies and gentlemen, building on this European engagement, Cyprus' national hydrogen strategy represents a realistic and feasible approach tailored to our specific national circumstances and needs. The strategy for the period 2025 to 2030 prioritizes regulatory adaptation through the development of a comprehensive framework which addresses the entire hydrogen value chain, from production and distribution to end-use applications. By 2027, we aim to establish this framework, which will encompass clear licensing procedures and the necessary safety and quality standards to support a reliable hydrogen ecosystem. Beyond the regulatory framework, our strategy also focuses on the gradual introduction of hydrogen in heavy transport, trucks and buses, as the optimal and most cost-effective pathway for integrating hydrogen into our energy mix. This approach acknowledges that for Cyprus, electrification of passenger transport remains the most suitable and efficient option, particularly given our island's extensive renewable energy potential and the compatibility of short distances with current electric vehicle capabilities. However, we must be realistic about the challenges ahead. Water scarcity is a critical factor for Cyprus, as producing green hydrogen through electrolysis requires between 9 and 15 kilograms of water for every kilogram of hydrogen produced. In addition, the necessary investments in specialized infrastructure are exceptionally high and require careful technical and strategic planning. These challenges are not unique to Cyprus. We observe that Europe's shift toward an economically viable model implies a slower green transition due to increased costs. Yet, this should not discourage us. Private initiatives that promote innovative technologies through pilot programs must continue to ensure we don't fall behind international technological developments. The government will support hydrogen development by actively encouraging private initiatives and pilot projects, while establishing the legislative and regulatory frameworks needed for success. Innovation, entrepreneurship are the fundamental driving forces of the energy transition, and the collaboration between private investment and targeted government policy can create a dynamic and sustainable hydrogen ecosystem. This spirit of collaboration between government and private sector is already evident here today. This conference exemplifies the kind of partnership we need, bringing together academic institutions, European organizations, industry leaders, and policymakers to create the fertile ground where hydrogen's promise can become a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a critical juncture in Cyprus' energy journey. The challenges we face are undeniably significant, but the opportunities before us are extraordinarily promising. With a clear strategy, strong cooperation among all stakeholders, and steadfast support for innovative initiatives, we can position Cyprus as a meaningful contributor to sustainable energy development in the Mediterranean region. I am certain the presentations and discussions that follow will offer valuable insights to guide our path forward. I would like to thank you, and I wish you all a productive and enlightening conference. Thank you, Maggie, for the invitation.
Thank you, Minister, for accepting the invitation. We now move into our first thematic session, focusing on the hydrogen-wide role in the energy transition. Our first speaker is one of Europe's most prominent advocates. Mr. Hadjimarkakis leads Hydrogen Europe, representing over 600 members working across the hydrogen value chain. Cyprus Hydrogen Association is one member of it. Mr. Hadjimarkakis, Mr. Hadjimarkakis, we were really happy to have you. Sorry.
Many thanks also for the nice pronunciation in Cypriot Greek of my name, because in Greece you pronounce it differently, in Germany you pronounce it differently. In German, by the way, Schatzi means my treasure, which is always the best. Dear Minister, thanks for your words. Dear Members of Parliament, dear High Commissioner of India, dear Mikis, what you did in Cyprus is extraordinary. And we can see, in comparison to other countries, how Cyprus has, over the last 5 years, really developed into a hydrogen country, closely followed by Ireland. Paul McCormick is here, and it's of absolutely importance to highlight what the Minister just said. Cyprus is going to pick the EU presidency in January, followed by Ireland in July. So the next year will mark a very, very important date in the hydrogen development. Why? Because all these years where we ramped up the renewables, which is fantastic, we did not look at one certain aspect which brings the costs up, that's curtailment. Our grids are not suited for this high and big ramp up of renewables. And the country I know best, Germany, I'm born there, suffered last year from curtailment and redispatching costs of more than 2 billion per year. And only now, and I'm very grateful that the Minister went to Brussels, negotiated with Energy Commissioner Dan, I pronounce it correctly, Janssen, and with your Greek colleague, Mr. Papastavrou. You discussed that clearly.
And it's for the first time that people who acknowledge very much the ramp up of renewables, like the Energy Commissioner, talks openly about it. So far, nobody talked about that. The costs he raised are, in 2022, for the whole of Europe, 5.2 billion euro. And he says in the next 10 years, this might go up to more than 35 billion euro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable. It's costs that could be reduced or that could be made valuable in producing hydrogen. And who else is more suited to do it than islands like Cyprus, like Ireland, who also have to cover other demands in Ireland, especially the artificial intelligence issue, data centers, with 40% in Ireland already consumption of electricity by data centers. And these are elements, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to tackle. You cannot tackle it by electrons alone, and by batteries alone. By the way, we have no batteries in Europe. We need to do it ourselves, and that leads me to possibilities via molecules, and hydrogen is this. I'm not sure whether the presentation is on, yes? Yeah, you can. Because I would like to highlight also a very, very important aspect that has to do with curtailment on one hand, managing this on one hand, but also other parts. I'm just coming back, and it's a coincidence, Mr. High Commissioner, from India, where I have seen, similar to Cyprus, a major development of this technology within few years, much faster than we do it in Europe. Before we go there, I would like to highlight a little bit where we are. Here you see. That's the Gartner curve. The Gartner curve is the hype cycle. And you always have what you see down there. A technology trigger that started in 2015, 16, 17, where we thought, oh, hydrogen is an interesting technology to balance out this renewables. And then you go to the peak of inflated expectations. Repower EU, you mentioned it, Minister. Repower EU was during the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, where everybody thought, wow, we don't have gas anymore, let's replace it by hydrogen immediately. This is inflated, this is not reality. It has been inflated also by politicians who thought, let's kill many, many flies with one stone. And then you go down the trough of disillusionment, because you then need to turn PowerPoint into Excel and Excel into FID, final investment decision. That takes courage, that takes sometimes real big decisions, and that's where we are now. We are gone through this bottom, down there, and we are bottoming out. You see some Indian flags, because India, in parallel, you see it there, has launched hydrogen conferences and auctions. Auctions where the Indian government has done one thing, and that's very important for all of us, because we all talk about hydrogen, it's nice, but who buys your hydrogen? Who buys it? If you don't have an off-taker who says, I will buy, you don't produce. India did the following. They just said, I'm the government, I'm the off-taker. And I will now manage to do with this hydrogen via green ammonia. In this case, it's green ammonia. First auction is green ammonia. I will try to do the job of finding, so to say, off-takers. That's why Indian government was our first international partner at the Hydrogen Week. And it was present, although it was not international partner, also this year, where Minister Papanastasiou was also there as a keynote speaker. Basically, what I want to say is we are now there where you see the Red Cross bottoming out. We see first large FIDs. We also see something, it's a preparation on the next journey in India, and it's the preparation of the next call, next tender on methanol. I'm saying that, and now we come to the role of Cyprus as a presidency, because methanol is a fuel for shipping. And Cyprus is a big flag state. With Greece together, I think more than 60% of all European ships are under these two flags. And that's why it's of particular importance that you spoke together with your Greek colleague. And this here will be the message of COP30. Delivering sustainable fuels. And you see that in Belém, the pledge that is prepared by Brazil, Italy, and Japan at the moment is quadrupling sustainable fuels. What is sustainable fuels? It's biofuels. The Brazilians have this algae pest, this problem with sargassum. But it's also hydrogen-based fuels like e-diesel, e-kerosene, methanol, also ammonia. Ammonia you can use also as a fuel. This will be, most probably, we are a little bit listening to what is happening in Belém, the outcome of the next COP. And this is also corresponding to, and you can see it here, Bill Gates's change in mind. This is from Paris. The picture you see here is from Paris 10 years ago. And you see he was there on stage with the host, François Hollande at the time. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, was already very, very prominently represented there, and Obama. But Bill Gates published 10 days ago, two weeks ago, 3 tough truths about climate, where he says, basically, stop the purism. You cannot just bet on one technology only, what he also did on electrons. You need to have a diverse, resilient approach. You need to have a technology diversity. And I'm here to say hydrogen is not the savior, but hydrogen is the enabler of this integration of different technologies, because you need to combine electrons and molecules. And this is done by hydrogen. Thank God Mr. Gates now sees this, and it's important because you will see a lot of continued issues here. And why is this important? We see and we witnessed the failure of the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, to come up with greening schemes. It failed. Mr. Trump played his role. Cyprus abstained. I'm very aware of this. But why can't we as Europeans just go ahead and say, on these big routes that we have there, from China especially, passing by India, and then passing also Cyprus if things go via Suez Canal, and India is always on the way, even if you go around Africa. Why don't we establish bunkering hubs, basically fueling stations for ships, where you start as Europeans to blend, I would love to say on an obligatory basis, but we also can talk about volunteer schemes, but we blend 5%, 10%, 20% of e-methanol, which is based on hydrogen, in India. So India is preparing, there you see the 4 ports that are preparing for this strategy. But you need the off-taker. You need the ships that say, we do it. Cypriot and Greek ships could start. It doesn't cost too much, but it creates this change of new production of green fuels and concrete offtake. And this is the message, combined with the message that you all know, IMEC. You remember when in the Suez Canal there was this blockage 2 years ago, in 2023. And then we thought about, we need to build up a better combination between the Asian markets and the European markets by rail, by wires, and also by better digital condition. And IMEC comes now back big time. And this is what I would also hope, and I'm very confident that during the Cypriot and the Irish presidency, this issue here will play a role, and the hydrogen issue is simply integrated into these ideas. It's not the major issue, but it's simply integrated, and I'm very confident that the Cypriot presidency, and you mentioned how important it is, and where we are at the crossroads of history, will be a remarkable presidency. Why not, Mr. High Commissioner, having during the Cypriot presidency a big event on exactly these issues? I think it's remarkable. By the way, India accepted EU as the chief guest at their national day, at the Republic Day in January. So EU is the chief guest, I've seen, which is already a hint that a strong cooperation makes sense. May I say one thing and then I stop? Atmar Nirbhar Bharat. You understand that. In 2020, Prime Minister Modi started a campaign saying resilient, self-reliant India. And that's the new role of hydrogen. It's not just the climate issue, it's making countries, economies self-reliant, self-sufficient, resilient. We are not resilient if we have a lot of renewables that we need to curtail. We are not resilient if we have to import everything. We are resilient if we manage to use the resources we have, solar, wind, and you have a lot of them here in Cyprus, and to make them in a circular economy usable. This is the role of hydrogen. It's a resilience guarantee. Atmanirbhar, that's the word in the traditional language, and this is something we can learn and we should do. Basically, we will showcase this also with an updated hydrogen strategy next year. So the strategy that we have, you mentioned it, Minister, from 2020 is out of date. And we need to update it, we need to make it clearer and realistic. And realistic terms are already very, very much for hydrogen. I'm very grateful, Mikis, to you to bringing all this together. We appreciate that very much, and we know it will be, historically, if you look back, a cornerstone of the hydrogen development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now let's welcome Dr. Kyriakos Hatzigiannis. President is the chair of the permanent Standing Committee on Energy, Trade and Tourism. Thank you, Dr. Hatzigiannis, for being here today.
Good morning to everybody. Dear Minister, dear President, dear colleagues, dear Rector, dear Mr. Magis, dear Professor Andreas Poulikas, as co-organizers, distinguished guests, dear colleagues from the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends from the academia, also from industry, and especially our experts. It is a privilege to address you today at this outstanding conference about hydrogen for clean future. This event captures both the spirit of innovation and the urgency of transformation that define our time. Let me begin by congratulating the Cyprus Hydrogen Association for its vision, persistence, and leadership. Through its initiatives, it has placed hydrogen firmly at the center of Cyprus' energy conversation, building bridges between policymakers, scientists, industry, and, of course, civic society. I also wish to commend Frederick University for its pioneer academic and research work. Frederick is not only an academic institution, it is a strategic partner in national progress. Its contribution to hydrogen technologies is shaping the very foundation of Cyprus' future energy model. The human capital of Cyprus, our universities, our businesses, our engineers, our entrepreneurs, is our greatest asset. By strengthening university-industry partnerships like those led by Frederick and creating incentives for pilot projects, Cyprus can accelerate technology adoption and local expertise. Hydrogen plays a unique and transformative role in the energy transition. It is the linking element between electricity, transport, industry and heating, between renewable generation and energy of course storage. Unlike other energy carriers, hydrogen offers flexibility. It can be stored for long periods, transported across borders, and converted back into power, heat, or fuel. It complements renewables by absorbing excess energy from solar and wind and providing stability to power systems. For small and isolated energy systems, such as Cyprus, based also on the experience of your country. Hydrogen can be the missing link that enables true energy autonomy, balancing intermittency and ensuring resiliences. Hydrogen is not competing against renewable, it is completing them. And in doing so, it will redefine the architecture of our energy future. Hydrogen represents much more than a new energy source. Decarbonization is no longer a theoretical call. It is a global obligation. Cyprus must drastically reduce emissions across all sectors. Hydrogen is indispensable to this mission. It decarbonizes hard-to-abate sectors, heavy industry, maritime and air transport, long-haul logistics, where direct electrification is either technically or economically unfeasible. Moreover, hydrogen provides a circular opportunity. Its production from renewable electricity can be combined with carbon capture and storage to create synthetic fuels, ammonia, and sustainable chemicals. This opens a new industrial landscape for Cyprus, one that integrates clean energy with industrial transformation and digitalization. It is a strategic platform upon which we can build our energy independence, regional cooperation, and technological competitiveness. Cyprus, positioned at the crossroads of Europe, the Middle East and Africa, is uniquely suited to become a hydrogen bridge of the Eastern Mediterranean. Our partnership with Greece, Israel, Egypt, and Lebanon, and hopefully soon with Syria, already demonstrate what can be achieved through diplomacy, trust, and shared purposes. But to realize their potential, Cyprus must move from vision to strategy. We urgently need a comprehensive national hydrogen strategy, a roadmap that integrates production, storage, distribution, and export, that connects energy policy with education, research, and industrial growth, and that aligns our national efforts with the broader European hydrogen agenda. Such a strategy must be coordinated, transparent, and forward-looking. It must define clear priorities, from infrastructure and financing frameworks to regulatory clarity and skills development. Only then will Cyprus become not merely a participant, but a driver of the regional hydrogen transition. However, we must also confront ongoing challenges. Energy protectionism across Europe and beyond, but especially here in this country, in my country, unfortunately, and in the head of many persons and personalities. We see tendencies to restrict markets, to favor domestic monopolies, or to protect established technologies at the expense of innovation. This trend is short-sighted and counterproductive. Let me be very clear. Protectionism in energy is the enemy of the progress. It limits competition, discourages private investment, and slows the green transition, but also is the killer of the local economy and the big killer of the people and also for the society. If we are truly serious about decarbonization, we must open our market fully to ideas, to investment, and to technological competition. Let hydrogen compete freely with solar with wind, and all of them with emerging clean technologies. Let the most efficient, sustainable, and innovative solutions prevail, not those politically favored. An open market supported by strong institutions and transparent rules, is the best guarantee for both innovation and fairness. This is why I wish to make a direct appeal to the international investment community. Come and invest in the hydrogen future of Cyprus. Our island offers stability, EU alignment, excellent connectivity, and high-level human capital. We are ready to partner in projects that span the entire hydrogen value chain, from renewable production and electrolysis to storage, mobility, but also for export. This is not only an environmental project, it is an economic and strategic opportunity. The hydrogen economy will reshape industries, create new markets, and generate quality jobs. By investing here, you invest in a region that connects continents and in a country that believes in open competition and innovation. Cyprus must now take bold steps to support private investment, reduce bureaucracy, and empower our research ecosystem. Public policy should not seek to control the market, it should enable it. Dear friends, the path to a clean Cyprus future requires courage, the courage to open markets, to trust competition, and to build partnerships based on merit and transparency. We must ensure that the hydrogen transition remains open, fair, and competitive, not dominated by a few, but powered by many. Only then will hydrogen become what it is meant to be, not just the fuel of the future, but the fuel of prosperity. Let us therefore work together, governments, universities, business, and citizens, to design and implement a comprehensive, modern, and outward-looking hydrogen strategy for Cyprus, a strategy that turns our geographic position into strategic power and our scientific potential into sustainable growth. I believe three priorities are necessary for Cyprus' green hydrogen strategy. First is the institutional coordination and vision. The second is the infrastructure. And the third, education, research, and industry synergies. If we succeed, Cyprus will not just follow the hydrogen revolution, it will shape it. Cyprus is ready to lead, not by size, but by vision, not by control, but by cooperation, and not by protectionism, but by openness and innovation. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best and the best success for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hajiyannis, Chair of the Parliament Committee on Energy, Trade, Industry and Tourism. Our next speaker is Dr. Andreas Poulikas, Professor of Energy System at the School of Engineering at the Frederick University, our host today. As we all know, he was for several years the chairman of CERA, Cyprus Energy Regulatory Authority. Professor Poulikas, please join us to the podium to share your insights.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Here is the outline of my presentation. First, I will briefly discuss the role of the hydrogen in the energy transition from carbon economy to hydrogen economy. Then 2 slides concerning the Cyprus electricity system, the characteristics of the system and the challenges we are facing and how this can be solved. And then I will concentrate on 3 recent research works concerning the Cyprus energy transition to hydrogen economy with the with the analysis of energy, water, and transport nexus, the Eastern Mediterranean sustainable natural gas utilization for the production of hydrogen, and also the analysis of the INEC electricity interconnection, which is a strategic corridor for the EU decarbonization. The last two research works actually requires regional cooperation. Now, the role of hydrogen in the energy transition, I will present you a scenario I have published in 2009 concerning the shift of the European Union from the carbon economy to the hydrogen economy. This is the energy system in 2010 of the European Union, with black line concerns oil, which is used in all energy sectors. The green line concerns the natural gas, which again was used in all energy sectors, in the industrial sector, in the transport sector, in the electricity sector, as well as in the domestic sector. And also with blue line is the electricity sector, which in the case of the European Union, power generation is through nuclear power, coal, and also natural gas, and in some regions in Cyprus with liquid fuels. Now, with this optimistic scenario, it was expected between 2020 and 2030, the first transformation of the European energy system to a more sustainable one towards the hydrogen economy. As you can see, the black line is only for the oil sector. That means oil, so for the transport sector, that means oil is used in the oil sector only. With the green line, again, is the natural gas, which it is used, again, it was supposed to be used again in all the energy sectors and the electricity sector. And also part of the natural gas is reformed in order to produce hydrogen. And then we have the appearance of the first hydrogen plants, hydrogen power generation plants, and also the establishment, the appearance of the hydrogen communities, the so-called today hydrogen valleys, communities that are self-sustained in the production of energy through renewable energy sources, and the excess energy produced can then be converted into green hydrogen and then used and traded through the regional hydrogen distribution networks. And finally, through this optimistic scenario, as you can see, between 2040 and 2050, oil disappears from the scene. We have heavy use of hydrogen through all sectors. We have high integration of renewable energy sources. We have the appearance of hydrogen airplanes, and so on. Now, of course, by 2050, we expect also the installation of the so-called super smart grid that may allow 100% renewable energy sources. This is actually the grid that will connect Europe with the Middle East and North Africa countries, with the MENA countries. And then we can actually install renewable energy sources in places where the potential is high. For example, wind potential is high in the North Sea and also on the west coast of Europe and the west coast of North Africa, and in some areas as the Aegean Sea. Also, solar technologies can be then installed in the North Africa, Middle East, and also in the south of Europe. And hydropower where the potential is high, same with the biomass, and also marine and geothermal technologies. And in order to complete this scene, we need storage in the form of hydrogen. Now here I show you the European Union hydrogen strategy published in 2020. It was supposed actually by 2024 to have an installation of 6 gigawatt of electrolyzers by producing 1 million tons of green hydrogen. Between 2025 and 2030, we expect hydrogen to become part of the integrated energy system with the production of more than 10 million tons of green hydrogen. And after 2030, we expect the large-scale integration of green hydrogen. However, based on a recent report from Acer, the installation of electrolyzers in 2024 was only 216 megawatt instead of 6 gigawatt. However, based on the licensing so far in the European Union, it is expected that by 2030, the installed capacity of the electrolyzers will be around 60 gigawatt instead of 40 that it was already included in the strategy. Now, concerning the Cyprus hydrogen strategy, already mentioned by the minister as well, correctly recognizes the hydrogen as a key component of the energy mix, correctly ask for the creation of a legislative framework in Cyprus, also the harmonization of national regulatory framework. What is missing actually, and we expect that this will be actually included in the following years in an update of the strategy, are target measures in order to kickstart the hydrogen value chain in the production, in the transport and storage, and in the use of, in the final consumption. Now, 2 slides concerning the Cyprus electricity system. Here is actually the installed capacity in terms of renewables in Cyprus. Today, there are 908 megawatts installed capacity of photovoltaics, 157 megawatt of wind, and 13 megawatt of biomass. The total installed capacity concerning conventional technologies is almost 1,500 megawatt, and the installed capacity in renewables is more than 1,000 megawatt. And of course, this high penetration of renewable energy sources create problem to the system. And one of the issues are the curtailments of the renewable production. So in order to solve this, there are 3 different activities: short-term activities, medium-term activities, and the long-term activities. The short-term activities concern the increase in the system flexibility by integrating the renewables into the electricity market. This is happening today. And also the introduction of natural gas into the Cyprus system with storage as well. And the promotion of e-mobility, which is especially the V2G technology, is a bidirectional flow of the electricity between the car and the grid. Now, the medium term concerns the establishment of electricity interconnections. Cyprus is the only member state which is not interconnected with the internal electricity market of the European Union. And the long-term activity concerns the use of hydrogen, the production of hydrogen from renewable energy sources and from natural gas resources. So now let me concentrate on the 3 recent research works. Now, in order to examine the shift of Cyprus to the hydrogen economy, we have developed a mathematical model, a market-objective optimization actually, in order to model and to examine the power, water, and transport nexus by simulating the Cyprus transition towards the hydrogen economy with the main target, the long-term decarbonization, focusing on the coordinated investments in renewable energy, electricity interconnections, in hydrogen infrastructure for power and transport desalination units, and also in some scenarios in order to increase the generated electricity, the use of small modular reactors. I will not go into the mathematics, of course. Here I show you the scenario with the expansion of the generation system of Cyprus with only renewable energy sources. On the top figure is the energy mix between 2026 and 2060. By expanding only with renewable energy sources, we expect the increase of photovoltaic systems from 800 megawatt to 7,000 megawatt. And this 7,000 megawatt is actually the limit based on our calculations for installation of photovoltaics in Cyprus due to space limitations and also due to the grid limitations as well. Now, with the purple is the generation using fossil fuels. We observe by this scenario the decarbonization of the electricity sector to become around 2053. We expect a generation by 2060 of around 15 terawatt hour and electricity export of 1.5 terawatt hours. That means we have no curtailments. And also on the bottom figure is the production of green hydrogen from the blue color from photovoltaics. We expect by 2060 the production of 40,000 tons per year of green hydrogen, and also water production of more than 400 million cubic meters, and that means that we give the autonomy of Cyprus in water. Now, in order to increase the electricity production and therefore the production of hydrogen, we have also integrated in one of the scenarios the small modular reactors. With the yellow line on the top figure is the production of electricity from the small modular reactors together with the photovoltaics of 7,000 megawatt. Now, we expect that the small modular reactors by 2060 will reach a capacity of around 3,000 megawatt, and the total generation, electricity generation, is more than double than in the case of only renewables, 37 terawatt hours, and decarbonization of the electricity sector is expected by 2037, not in 2056. And the production of hydrogen, which is the bottom figure, is the production from photovoltaics and also from the small modular reactors with the red color, will reach around more actually than 500,000 tons of hydrogen per year by 2060, with the demand in the transport sector around 230,000 tons per year. Now, what about the cost of hydrogen? Of course, today the levelized cost of hydrogen is around $5 per kilogram. We expect by our calculations that this will be decreased by 2060 below $1.8 per kilogram. And this is in line actually with other recent reports that actually the competitiveness of hydrogen for power generation with respect to heavy fuel oil, to coal, or to natural gas comes below $2 per kilogram. I will not go into the energy flow diagrams, I have already discussed those. Now, if you are interested more, you can download the Nexus Outlook from our website. The presentations will be distributed, so you can actually find the link on the presentation. Now, let's move on now to the Eastern Mediterranean sustainable natural gas utilization. And by Eastern Mediterranean natural gas, we mean the natural gas reserves of Egypt, Israel, and Cyprus. This is why we need regional cooperation, as I mentioned before. Here I show you in this table the potential natural gas reserves in the Southeast Mediterranean region is more actually than 2,300, almost 2,400 BCM. So in order to examine the possibility of the East Med region to become a major hydrogen production and export hub, we have developed a mathematical model. This is based on a complex Gaussian bell curve algorithm for mapping the natural gas production trajectories, and also to model the hydrogen production using steam methane reforming. And the main target in this study was to the economic optimization for maximum revenue, taking into account the extraction cost, the carbon taxation, and the hydrogen market dynamics. I will not go into the mathematics, of course. Here I show you the two different scenarios we examined. The utilization of only Cyprus natural gas reserves and the utilization of the regional natural gas reserves. In the top figure is the production of natural gas, with the dotted red line is the production of natural gas from Cyprus natural gas resources, which actually grow from 6 billion cubic meters to a peak of 10 billion cubic meters by 2035. And the bottom figure is the production of hydrogen The production of hydrogen from Cyprus reserve, natural gas reserves, is the blue line, in which we expect a production of 4 billion kilograms of hydrogen through steam methane reforming, with a total revenue of $18 billion. Now, concerning the regional collaboration, the natural gas production can grow from the 60 billion cubic meters to 100 billion cubic meters by 2035, is the red solid line on the top figure, and the hydrogen production to 40.7 billion through steam methane reforming by 2050, with a total revenue of $247 billion. And of course, with significant reserves remaining post-2050. Again, if you are interested, you can download the outlook for this research from our website. Now, let me finalize with the analysis of the IMEC electricity interconnection. Is the famous India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, the electricity interconnection for this corridor. We have developed a mathematical optimization model to simulate more than 3.7 thousand kilometers of electricity interconnection, a 5 gigawatt high voltage DC superhighway. By connecting 10 gigawatt of renewable energy sources, which are distributed in India, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, and reaching Europe through strategic gateway nations, Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. And for this optimization, we used hourly optimization to capture seasonal and daily variability of the renewable energy sources, and also decision variables in order to represent solar and wind operation. I will not go, of course, into the details. The last two slides. It is possible, based on our calculations, to have a 100% renewable energy corridor from the IMEC electricity interconnection, with 5 gigawatt of solar and 5 gigawatt of wind capacities, distributed, as I mentioned before, in India, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, with a total annual generated electricity of almost 20 terawatt hours, and flowing electricity to the EU markets of more than 13 terawatt hours, to Israel 2.7 kilowatt hours, and also transmission losses of 3.8 terawatt hours. And the investment, of course, for this project is between $15 billion to $25 billion. And the price reaching the European Union is expected around 4.4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is quite competitive, and generated $1.2 billion per year in transit fees and export revenues. And of course, setting actually Israel, Cyprus, and Greece as strategic positions for the European Union entry hubs, while supporting, of course, the continental European climate targets. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Boulikas, for presenting your latest research work. Now we'll take a break. We're going to have some coffee outside the seminar room. We'll be back 10 past 11 in 20 minutes.
Sí, θα πούμε κάποια μέρα.
From the Granfield University of UK, from 1994 has been working on hydrogen projects for gas. It's turbines in air, land and sea application. Professor Pilidis, please join us to the stage.
Good morning, dear leaders of Cyprus, dear leaders of Frederick University. I'm very honored to be here with you today. Thank you very much for your invitation. And dear students, you are the primary protagonists of today, because I hope all these sessions that are given to you today are going to give you your long-term homework. I would like to share with you some views. They are not even views. They are perhaps ways of asking better questions for the future. And I would like to broadly present two decarbonization evaluations, one for the country where I am working, which is the United Kingdom. The other is for an oil exporting country. And very quickly at Cranfield we realized that sustainability needs to have in parallel the consistent aim of the environment and also economic progress. So I would like to share some of these scenarios and also some of these concepts, and they also give a pretty good view of the scale of the challenge that the students of today will have to solve in the future. I come from Cranfield University, specifically from the Center of Propulsion, where we deal with gas turbines for our land and sea applications. Our initial interest in hydrogen was used for hydrogen for aviation, propulsion systems for aviation, but very quickly we realized that you cannot look at a single economic sector alone, and this is why we have expanded for strategic reasons to look at the wider decarbonization of up to countries. The advantages of hydrogen I'm not going to repeat because you have heard a lot about it and you know a lot about it already, but there is something specific that I would like to highlight, that hydrogen also presents an additional opportunity, and this is when we're going to be burning it, say in gas turbine engines. Hydrogen presents the opportunity to give you much lower nitrogen oxide emissions. And this is not with existing combustors, but it is with specially modified combustors to take advantage of the properties of hydrogen. We can say a lot more about this. We're actually doing large-scale experimental work in this area, but if any of you is interested, we can engage in a conversation subsequently. Now, in terms of decarbonizing, I'm going to talk first about the United Kingdom. And what we did is we took statistics, and this is what you can see in the picture behind me. These are from the British government, is the energy demand for a number of different sectors. And in this particular case, what we tried to do was to assess what would the UK economy look like when we decarbonize everything that happened in the country. How it doesn't matter, how long it doesn't matter, but we took the same demand that we have today, and then we converted that to a different demand, different in the sense that when we decarbonized, the energy consumption requirements changed, but the idea was to get the same utility, the same amount of transport, the same amount of heating for homes, the same amount of other areas that require energy. And, so sector by sector, we made some speculations of what would the new demand in terms of hydrogen and electricity. We looked jointly at those two. We felt that hydrogen, in a way, is a form of electricity, of stored electricity, and this is what we tried to look at. And again, without going through the details here, you have the result of 6 scenarios that we examined for the United Kingdom. And the first observation was that hydrogen would require about a third to 40% of the energy supply for the United Kingdom. It would be a huge increase in the supply of electricity, and hydrogen, the production of hydrogen, would be a major user of this. Another very interesting perspective, again, what we found is that for the United Kingdom, we will need 25,000 tons of hydrogen every day. And the result of this, of course, is, again, we will look at hydrogen for electrolysis. Later, we planned also to include the reforming of natural gas, but in this initial iteration, we examined just hydrogen for electrolysis. Furthermore, the other observation is that aviation was going to be by far the biggest consumer of this hydrogen. And in aviation, we examined the joint decarbonization using electricity and hydrogen, and we found that the majority of aviation would need hydrogen, and a small fraction, by small fraction I mean about 15%, would require electricity, the direct electricity use. And then we examined 6 scenarios. I'm not going to take you through all of them. You have them here on the screen. And of these 6 scenarios, the assumption that we made was that all the current electricity production mechanisms were kept, perhaps modified to decarbonize the fossil fuel, the natural gas in particular. Significant amount of electricity in Britain is produced using natural gas. So we said we're going to keep that, but adopt CCUS. And we added a penalty in the efficiency of the combined cycle gas turbines that use this particular technology. And what you have here is some of the outcomes. What we have, what we have here is 2019. This investigation took place 2 years ago. And in 2019, we took that as a baseline. And this is why you see the number 1. The number 1 for electricity capacity corresponds to the current generation capacity of the UK, that is about 100 gigawatts. And the supply is the current electricity supply, which is of the order of 1 million terajoules approximately. So when we looked at all the decarbonized scenarios, there's something consistent that emerged, and it is that broadly there was a requirement to quadruple the electricity supply. This is the electrical energy that was being produced. So if you were to decarbonize the country in 15 years, this means that in 15 years we had to produce 4 times the amount of electricity that is being produced today. Now this looked enormous to us, then we went back and we looked at energy statistics of the past, and we found that twice in British history there was a quadrupling of the electricity supply in about 15, 16 years. One was just before the Second World War, the other one was just after the Second World War. So, we're looking at third time lucky, in a sense, for this to happen. Then what was of interest as well was the installed capacity. If most of this additional installed capacity was renewable, we would need a quadrupling of the capacity. On the other hand, if we used an emphasis on nuclear or on gas turbines that actually can operate continuously, the high utilization of these machines meant that we would need to be only perhaps doubling the capacity. And we thought that this dichotomy was a very interesting result. So what this showed us, in a sense, please don't look at this as answers to the problem. Please look at it as ways of asking better questions for the future. Then there's going to be many other iterations. This was done at a strategic level, so then this would inform, our research policy as a university. Then the next thing we did is, we said the UK is an industrial economy. We had a number of researchers coming from a Middle Eastern country. This was Libya, and their interest was to see what would this country look like when, say, people would stop buying oil. You know, who knows how far in the future this may be. Current politics, as you know, are taking us back to the fossil fuel era. I personally believe and hope that this is going to be short-lived because, you know, there is a problem that we have to address. The more we delay, the more expensive it will become to address it. But then the issue with this particular country is, on one hand, you want to decarbonize it, on the other hand, you want to keep their main source of wealth generation alive for what you could call the decarbonized era. And again, for this one, you're going to see we looked at 3 single solutions. We looked at solar, we looked at wind, and we looked at nuclear as well. And in the end, this gave us very useful information to start looking at multiple solutions where we combined initially all 2, you know, it was solar and wind, and then just all 3 of them. But what you can see here is the broad philosophy of what we try to do. The bottom line that you see there is the electrical demand. This is in the winter season. We divided the year into 4 seasons, and this is the winter season. This is the winter electrical demand. Then at night, again, we adopted a single solution. The electricity will be provided by combined cycle gas turbines burning hydrogen as a fuel. Then the electricity supply is what you see there, and then during the day you see you have this huge surplus, and the idea is to use this huge surplus of energy to produce the hydrogen for export, you know, to keep the national wealth generation, primary national wealth generation mechanism going, and also a small amount of the hydrogen produced here would be used by the hydrogen combined cycle gas turbines down there. Now, of course, you can say you could use batteries, you know, you could use pump storage, you know, there are all sorts of other ideas to store energy. You know, we just looked at one solution. But then this presents hydrogen as, you know, one of our speakers was saying this morning, as a way of getting to match the supply and the demand of electricity. You know, this is an interesting role that hydrogen could play as well. So then we wouldn't need to curtail any energy, and by producing the right amount of hydrogen, we could have electricity at night as well. Then here in this picture, what you also saw is some of the assumptions that we made. Here you see the electricity available during the winter. There it is during the summer. This is specific to the 25th parallel. You know, this is in the south of Libya. And what this is also trying to show is if you install a nominal 100 gigawatts of power, you can see that you'll be getting different values for different types of energy. This is nuclear. In this case, the reason nuclear varies is because the cooling water temperature is changing, you know, for the nuclear plant. Wind, you know, here you see it in winter, there you see it in summer. What you see is, of course, depending on whether wind is blowing and how hard it is blowing or not. And of course, the sun, it depends on whether it is the summer or the winter. The inclination is different, and the inclination of the sun as well changes during the day. And these are the final outcomes. When we looked at solar alone, then what we found out is that 650 gigawatts of installed solar capacity were required. And this looks like a huge number. You know, if you compare it to the current UK power generation capability, the nominal installed power is about 100 gigawatts. But the interesting thing is that this is the solar capacity that China produces in 1 year. Then when we looked at wind, you can see to achieve the same thing, we need half the capacity of wind that we needed with solar. And when we looked at nuclear, you can see that nuclear is about a fifth of that one and about a third of that one approximately. Now, in this particular case, what was interesting about nuclear is nuclear per unit of energy produced was more expensive, but because of its continuous utilization, it wasn't only the plant that was utilized continuously, it was also all the other elements of the value of hydrogen chain that were utilized continuously, like the electrolyzer, there was less storage needed. And when we look at the hydrogen combined cycles unit required, because nuclear was running continuously, there was no need for this backup. So, it appeared as an interesting single solution. We're not for, we're not against any one of these methods. What we're just trying to do is see what these numbers looked like. Then, and here you see the combination of different ways of producing the electricity. So on the vertical axis, what you see is the total generating capacity, and the total generating capacity in this case is nuclear plus solar plus wind. And here you can see the wind power that was being installed, and each one of those lines represents different scenarios. So the top one is the just renewables combined, and in this particular case, what we see is that as we move to more and more wind, the requirement for solar is reduced. Then as we put in nuclear, so this is 30 gigawatts of nuclear power, and you can see that the total comes down very, very significantly. And then if it is only nuclear, you end up at this point there. So, this was one of the exercises that we did. There is also the issue of health and safety. Again, I have seen many of our students perform miracles when they went to industry, and it is my expectation also of all the students in the audience, for you to perform things that, look like very difficult at the moment. But then what we did is we tried to isolate most of the hydrogen chain, if we could, in what we would call a hydrogen farm. And here you see one of these farms where everything is concentrated in one place. This place is quite big. Here you have a 4.5 times 2.5, 20 gigawatts electrolyzer farm. And you can see, the electrolyzer equipment, there is storage equipment there. There are the hydrogen combined cycles. So the farm imports electrical energy and it exports hydrogen. Hydrogen for export is, for local use, is for liquefaction, for, aviation fuel, and, some of it also goes for exporting outside the country. So then we felt that this was an interesting idea. This is a 20 gigawatt electrolyzer farm. When I say it is, preliminary design of one, but it allows the concentration of all the equipment in one place, and then hopefully a cheaper way of managing the health and safety aspects of hydrogen, which are big challenges at the moment. Now, proliferation is an issue, something we came up with. Again, this is something that was invented by one of our researchers at Cranfield, is the idea of having a moving nuclear submersible power station. And what we're looking at is, the size of this submersible power station is based on the largest existing submarine design that is today. It's not even a modification of it, it's a brand new vehicle, but it has the envelope size of the largest submarines that we have today, and something like this could produce, we believe, 1 gigawatt of electrical power. So then these countries where there may be a risk of proliferation, they wouldn't be buying nuclear plants, they will be buying electricity that is produced from a nuclear plant that is actually located offshore, some distance offshore. And again, this is an area that has come out of this process of decarbonization. We plan to look at it in more detail in the future. These are examples for aviation as well. This was the primary driver for us to see how aviation could benefit from hydrogen. And in this particular case, we came up with an aircraft family to look at how would it compare with existing aircraft. This would be what we call a first generation aircraft family, because we would expect with time these aircraft will get better. What we have found here is different energy consumptions. These aircraft would be worse in energy consumption than conventional aircraft. Then looking at the country as a whole, going back to the United Kingdom, again, what we would have is, this would be the hydrogen infrastructure, and then we would have some big electrolyzer farms in different places. Then we would have pipeline feeds to major users of hydrogen, and this is for liquefaction, this is for gaseous hydrogen, and then for smaller uses, there would be lorry transport or rail transport for them. Again, we're still developing these ideas, but something that came up as a concept as well is, could we be using the development of hydrogen, in particular the location of the hydrogen farms, to also produce a social benefit? And what you have here is the wealth distribution of different places in the United Kingdom, where the darkest ones are the ones with the higher per capita income, the lighter ones are the ones with the lower per capita income in the country, and then there will be an incentive to locate some of these hydrogen farms in these places of lower per capita income to start delivering more wealth generation ability in these particular regions. And again, this is an idea now we're trying to work on with social scientists. So, just to conclude for today, I feel that all we've done is we are gradually learning how to ask better questions, and hydrogen we also see not only as a vehicle for decarbonizing, we see it as a vehicle for energy resilience, but we also see it as a vehicle for positive social change as well. Now, all these dimensions is work in progress, so we don't have proper answers yet, but we'd like to share with you the way our thought processes are evolving. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Pilidis. Our next speaker is Dr. Lindaropoulos. Brings years of experience working on hydrogen technologies. He's a former project officer at the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, so thank you for being here with us.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to have a short break from my retirement to rejoin hydrogen and hydrogen friends, especially here in Cyprus. So, Nicholas Neveropoulos, I used to work before retirement in June at the Clean Hydrogen Partnership in Brussels. I was responsible for green hydrogen production sector, and I served the sector for 25 years. And in my early days, this is when I met and collaborated with Andreas Koudikas, with Christodoulos Christodoulou and Giorgos Karagiolis. That was our first project at the time. We established a 25 kilowatt electrolyzer in the wind park of Kres in Greece. So I will be presenting you the support of the Clean Hydrogen JU to hydrogen production. And this is information that my ex-colleagues have also contributed to, so I'm speaking on their behalf. And if I can make this, okay. There it is. Things are moving. So yes, so the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, it's a public-private partnership between the European Commission, European industry, and European researchers. Yes, this is a bit tricky because this is half of the slide. It's sort of split. But the JU is handling around €1 billion of funds for research in Europe for this framework program. Yeah, it's looking weird because the screen is split. It's a PDF rather than yeah, that's the issue. Okay, try this.
The full screen next to the number 3, I think that should help. Control W.
Yeah, that's fine because at least we can see the full slide here.
And then F11 or something.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we provide support to the complete hydrogen value chain, from hydrogen production to hydrogen distribution and storage. Maybe I can still use the laser pointer. Indeed. Eventually to hydrogen uses, transport and stationary applications. Transport, it's a private car, but this is just a symbol because support for cars, no more. It's all heavy-duty transport, maritime, rail, perhaps aeronautical. Then for stationary fuel cells also is not enjoying any support because they were basically running on natural gas that was reformed internally. But it's mostly hydrogen as a molecule to industry, and recently hydrogen combustion. So it's not just electrochemical conversion in fuel cells, but going back to combustion in gas turbines or burners. Maybe one day the agenda is going to include hydrogen combustion in internal combustion engines, and we will see applications in transport. Besides these main pillars, we also have horizontal activities that include hydrogen valleys. And pray for the... that just went a little bit further down. Is there a page down? Yes. Right, let me just check where we are. I think we've... Yeah, okay. Right, so we are here for the green energy future, and this is how basically hydrogen is contributing to this. It's because we depend on renewables. It's renewables that help us produce the green hydrogen through electrolysis, and then there are various uses. So I have highlighted here what I think would be suitable for Cyprus. So hydrogen production from renewables through electrolysis, hydrogen storage, and then it's back to electricity, so it's power to power, or hydrogen to industry. There are some small industries in Cyprus, I believe a cement industry. Power to mobility, feeding hydrogen for transport, for trucks, And in case one day there is a natural gas grid, you can inject this hydrogen to the natural gas grid, maybe for eventual export. So, this is the support already provided by the JEU since its establishment in 2008. We provided 1.8 billion euro. So this is the institution that supports research at European level for this sector, for hydrogen use in transport, stationary, hydrogen production, 18% of this funding, 1.8 billion, and hydrogen valleys. And I make a bracket here to show you the hydrogen valleys, 21 hydrogen valleys currently are supported in the past. The latest one is from Iceland, the large one, and two smaller ones, one in Spain, one in Austria. Also, I'd like to point out there is a gap, Southeast Europe, so Cyprus is not there yet. There are 19 EU member states with valleys. I think you have made efforts in the past to get such a valley here, not yet successful. I think it's worthwhile to persevere. So, to produce hydrogen, it's either from breaking the water bond or from hydrocarbons, bio or fossil. Looking at the number of projects we've supported, you can see that the JEU has supported only renewable hydrogen production, not fossil, which is the main way of hydrogen production today. It's commercially viable. We are supporting what is currently not yet commercially viable. And looking at the number of projects, you can tell that the workhorse is the electrolyzer. So most of our support is going to electrolysis. This is how the funding is broken down in terms of different types of electrolyzers: high temperature solid oxide, low temperature PEM, alkaline, an ion exchange membrane. We support the lot. The support over the years ever increasing. And if we focus on the right-hand side, the beneficiaries of these projects, it's good news. Only a third goes to heavy industry, and the rest, which is important, I think, for Cyprus, is research institutions and SMEs. So 2/3 go to such type of partners. This slide shows the biggest of our demonstration projects. In blue, it's projects with PEM electrolyzers. In red, it's alkaline. And you can see that in over 12 years, electrolyzer capacity increased 200 times, and the funding we supported was reduced by 100 times per installed megawatt. So we had projects with 150 kilowatts at the time, and then moved on to 3 single stack alkaline in the food industry. This is a steel industry, 6 megawatt PEM atmospheric, 10 megawatt PEM high pressure in a refinery in Germany, 20 megawatt alkaline in a methanol plant in the Netherlands. And our biggest project is a 30 megawatt alkaline electrolyzer in a refinery in Greece, the EFIRA project. You'll be hearing more about this project in the next presentation, as it is part of the Tri-Iris Hydrogen Valley. Very important to note here is that all of the facilities continue to operate after the end of the project. And up to refine, all these projects have been completed and are still up and running. Very important for sound investment of research funds. Some important points that we observed from these big projects. The H2 Future project achieved an efficiency for the electrolyzer of 83% high heating value, high-low purity, very high operating range. They could go 150% of the nominal capacity, meaning they could provide significant balancing services that helped reduce the hydrogen cost almost by 50%. Refine has recently been commissioned, very close collaboration with industry, 10 megawatt, identified issues with the balance of plant components. And joules is still not there yet. Big issues because they had very high current density in these alkaline electrolyzers, and they had real-world market issues. You can imagine when you start producing a lot of hydrogen, you need to have the clients, etc. This is an interesting area, I think, for Cyprus in particular, which is the offshore production of hydrogen, putting electrolyzers offshore. This project was actually near shore at a port, initially in the UK, then it moved to Denmark, and eventually the project was wrapped up for various reasons. That was a 3 megawatt alkaline. Project Hope is a 10 megawatt PEM, which is going to be installed on this recycled barge 1 kilometer outside Ostend. Both of these projects foresaw desalination of seawater to feed the electrolyzer using thermal desalination techniques using the waste heat of the electrolyzer. So I think this is very promising, still a number of challenges. And of course, plenty of research projects that we're funding. These are the latest projects from the 2024 call. So the topics were low temperature water electrolyzer for highly pressurized hydrogen production going to 100 bar, innovative cells materials, revisiting the alkaline electrolyzer, anion exchange membrane, and direct seawater electrolysis. Also, I think, very relevant to Cyprus. A similar bright picture for high temperature electrolyzers, the solid oxide cell-based electrolyzers, where we have seen projects run from 150 kilowatts to eventually megawatt scale. The Multiply project has been commissioned, and there is a 4.2 megawatt recent project, Project Sirius. The emphasis in terms of research here is increasing the pressure, operating pressure of the solid oxide electrolyzers using ceramic materials, going to 5 bar, then 10, or 20, 30 bar in a pressurized vessel, and also increasing current densities. So, what is currently hot in electrolyzers is seawater electrolysis, all the time improving materials, components, balance of plant, things like digital twin. We'll hear about this in the Afira project. Removing forever plastics like the PFAS, improving manufacturing methods and recycling of materials, dynamic operation through the direct coupling with the renewables, and what is very important, since the Chinese electrolyzers have come with very low costs, is to put emphasis on the safety. That will explain why this device could perhaps be more expensive. All this under the EU competitiveness priority. Some other methods of hydrogen, renewable hydrogen production to electrolysis, I have a few slides on those, is the high temperature direct production of hydrogen from sunlight, concentrated solar. We have important players in Germany and in Greece on this, but still the high temperatures mean a lot of significant erosions, so there are still challenges in this one. The alternative would be the low temperature production of hydrogen from direct solar. Methods, systems like the photoelectrochemical cells, etc., that have reached some prototype status, but always one needs to think connecting photovoltaic panels to an electrolyzer as the alternative technology. Still, there is a lot of work being done. Finally, the production of hydrogen from biomass and waste. Biomass, perhaps, okay, for Cyprus, not so hot. However, this project is producing hydrogen from municipal waste and feeding the produced hydrogen to a cement factory, which perhaps would make sense for Cyprus. And I think this could be a good example, the high yield project for you to follow. My last two slides are about an alternative support the JU is providing. It's not just projects, we support some studies, and there was a study on how hydrogen could be further promoted in the national energy and climate plans, the NECPs. So we did NECPs for every country and one for Cyprus that had these specificities. This is now back in 2020, that Cyprus was not considering hydrogen at their NECP at the time. There is no natural gas network, however, an important renewable energy potential. And the study concluded with this picture. This study is available for everyone to download on our website. So there would be, depending on the low and high scenario, 7 to 51 megawatt of electrolyzers were to be installed by 2030. That would be fed by 15 to 110 megawatt of renewables. And this hydrogen would mostly be used in the transport sector, and some smaller quantities could be used in industry, with some benefits in CO2 reductions and job creation. I invite you to have a read, and I believe that maybe some ideas from this were eventually fed into your national hydrogen roadmap. I would like to acknowledge the support I enjoyed from my ex-colleagues in this material, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Liveropoulos. Our final speaker for this session is Mr. Chatzifotis. He's Manager of European Affairs of Motoroi Hellas Group, and he represents Three Hydrogen Valley. Mr. Chatzifotis, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, or Kalimera almost, 40 minutes. It's a great pleasure to be today here, Rector, professors, dear Makis. I'm really obliged to the Cyprus Hydrogen Association and the Cyprus Employees and Industries Federation, OEB. We are long-standing partners and friends, and through our project TRIES, we closely cooperate in order to transpose the experience we get as pioneers in this sector, but not only in this sector, as Motoroi Group, but also as coordinator of two leading projects on European level, the TRIES project, the TRIES Valley, and the FIRA Valley, and the FIRA project that we had the honor to have as a project officer for 2.5 years, dear Mr. Nikos Liveropoulos. A few words about the group of companies I represent. As you may know, Motoroi Group exists more than 50 years. We have been a traditional oil and gas company operating in Greece, but exporting in more than 80 countries all over the globe, creating 60% of our turnover outside Greece, and employing more than 4,000 people. And if I could speak about our current activity, we have developed the last, I would say, 10 years into a diversified multi-energy group: fuels, electricity, circular economy. Regarding fuels, as you may know, we own the largest industrial site in Greece, where we have one of the most efficient and complex refineries in Europe. We now invest a lot in its energy efficiency and in its digitalization, but we also invest in new technologies to produce the part that is not subsidized by Clean Hydrogen Partnership, production of hydrogen, the so-called blue hydrogen through the construction of CCS in our steam reformer in the refinery. In retail, holding two major brands of Avin and Coral, we have more than 1,500 refueling stations in Greece and in Balkans, as well as in Cyprus, represented by Coral Cyprus here. And we are now developing our electromobility network in Greece, the largest and the most fast expanded network. We have more than 1,400 spots in Greece to recharge, and recently we installed a 480 kilowatts EV charger in Athens, which could recharge your car in less than 10 minutes for what you need for a week. It's the strongest EV charger currently in the country. At the same time, we have invested a lot in renewables. In 5 years, we have become the second largest producer of green energy, mainly from wind. And now we have a project to invest as well a lot in solar. By 2030, we believe that we will have arrived up to 2.5 gigawatts of renewables. But we also invest in producing electricity by conventional means, by using natural gas, with a major investment together with another big company in Greece, Terna, in Komotini, in a new CCGT factory that will be adding 850 megawatts in the national grid. And the last but not least, the part of circular economy. We have also invested a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. We acquired a very big company of waste management, Elector. We have also acquired a company, Thalis, that is doing as well management of waste, solid waste, as well as dealing with the use and reuse of water. And we also acquired another smaller company, Verd, who is producing biofuels, and it owns a subsidiary, Prassinoladi, which is the largest collector of used cooking oils, which is feeding our bio refinery in Volos. And also, I would like to mention that 100% subsidiary of our group, LPC, is doing the regeneration of lubricants. The last almost 35-40 years, a quite innovative procedure, which we tend now to use green hydrogen to make it even completely green production. Now, about the tries project. It runs the last 2.5 years. We have partners from 5 different countries, Cyprus included. The intention is to use 2,410 tons of green hydrogen in the applications and to remove about 10,000 tons of CO2 every year. 26 partners in total. The duration of the project will be 5 years. And we have, how did we conceive this project? Motor Oil had decided to invest in hydrogen back in 2020, and through a really lengthy and tiring procedure to try to reserve and secure funding from different sources. After we managed to do that, we thought that, it does make sense, or in our case it does, because we can use green hydrogen in our refinery, but we also need to create a market around us. So the idea of tries was exactly to bring together academia, technology providers, but also potential end users, both from the private and public sector, and try to see where we could have some pilots, but as well to study where green hydrogen could be used. It is interesting that in this picture you can see how this project is could be applied in the map. We have used, actually we are coordinating and implementing 5 different projects which are funded under, if I'm not mistaken, 7 different financial mechanisms, both European and national. 2 projects are financed by the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, EFIR and tries. We have got a direct grant, important one, from the Resilience and Recovery Facility from the Greek state. And with this funding, we managed to upscale the EFIRA electrolyzer that was initially planned for 30 megawatts, now up to 50 megawatts. We have also managed to secure an important funding from Innovation Fund, as I told you before, to install a carbon capture system in our refinery. We have managed to secure 2 different grants from Connecting Europe Facility Transport in order to build 2 hydrogen refueling stations in Greece. We have a standing loan with the European Investment Bank of 40 million euros, which also supports both our electromobility but also green hydrogen infrastructure. And we also make use of tax incentives that they are provided by the Greek state for R&D activities. Where we stand currently in our project, we have taken an FID for our electrolyzer. It has been constructed. I will show you pictures afterwards. We have also built it and operating the first hydrogen refueling station in the Balkans, in Greece. We are, on the logistics side, we have acquired 4 hydrogen tube trailers. And we are now moving forward with our pilots, which is for the municipality of Loutraki, where it's actually our refinery, to get 1 light-duty vehicle. Also for the operator of the Corinth-Patras highway, Olympiados, also to get 1 light-duty vehicle. We have as a partner OSI, who is the operator, the bus operator of Athens, which will get one hydrogen bus funded by the program and will contribute its own funding to buy 3 more. That is in total 4 in the context of the tries project. We also expect to get an agreement, we also expect to proceed with the Port of Piraeus, which is going to install a fuel cell to produce electricity from hydrogen for its own autonomous operation in the port. And we also intend to use green hydrogen in our, as I told you, in our subsidiary LPC in order to produce green lubricants. And last but not least as well, to use green hydrogen in our refinery. Now, as I told you, the first hydrogen refueling station in Agioi Theodori is in operation since last May. It is a great achievement. It's the first of its kind, and it's the first in Europe that it is funded by Connecting Europe Facility Transport, and it has been constructed under this program. What is important to tell you about this HRS is that obviously cars are not going to get refueled outside the HRS. A nice story I like to say is that we have built it in front of the hydrogen pumps, conventional pumps, where we have more customers, as you may understand. And we have a convenience store that provides also coffee And to be honest, the most of the money it is made by coffee service. And these now are pictures from our refinery, where we have started constructing our electrolyzer. We have a compressor, the stacks, the electrolyzer stacks have arrived, and we have also installed about 500 meters of pipelines, hydrogen pipelines. We need to deliver this project, as we call it, to have it mechanically completed by August of next year, 2026. This is due to the very strict deadlines of RRF. It's really a nightmare. We are fighting with our vendor, with our EPC contractor, with the Greek government. We just got 2 days ago the approval of our environmental permit. And it is no more than 2 months that the regulatory framework was put in place by the government. And this was due to the fact that this project has been funded by the RRF, and there is an obligation, it's a milestone of the RRF also to combine the investment with regulatory imposition. And this shows that, you know, it is the private sector, in this case, that brings together the government. It's the private sector that accelerates the implementation and the regulatory development at this side of the European continent. Now, about the next steps, what I would really like to focus is that we tend to have the electrolyzer completed by next year, as I told you, and put it in full production by 2027. At the same time, it's important that through the project thrieres, the bus operator of Athens, besides the 4 buses that it's gonna get for sure, it has secured money from modernization fund to get 50 more buses and to include it in the major renewal of its bus fleet that it has already included electrical buses. This is something that is not directly attributed to thrieres, but if it was not the participation of the bus operator in the thrieres project, this would not have happened. And also what would not have happened is that the bus operator would not invest its own money to get 3 additional buses next to what it gets from the thrieres project. And this is to try to convince you to continue trying to get whatever kind of funding opportunity there is around, because it is an initiator. And once you get something, the first one, the next most probably will come. I have some thoughts to share about how the Greek experience could help Cyprus, because we are not too far away, not only geographically, but on the mindset on when introducing new technologies in our energy mix. As Motor Oil Group, as a refinery, it's not that we believe that, you know, hydrogen, it will be the one, the only, you know, the dominator of the future in energy, but we see its potential in producing part of the energy mix that is needed for shipping, for aviation, and to invest, to be there ready when the time comes to make this also commercially sustainable. I cannot tell you that it's currently commercially sustainable, and this would not have happened if it was not the major support by the funding. But at the same time, as I told you, in order to manage to get all this funding to support this project, we have been working non-stop the last 5 years. and we have been chasing whatever opportunity there was around. I told you there are 5, 6 different EU funding schemes, and there are always, dangers that they are hidden, like the so-called double funding. You cannot use two sources of funding to buy, let's say, one single item. Costs have to be split, and this creates really a lot of work for us to be, when the time comes to be audited, and to be really clean and clear in the way we have managed the different funding resources. And the second is the state aid rules. We have gone through three different EU and national state aid schemes in order to get approvals. We hold a state aid approval by the European Commission for the complete project, and this took us 4 years to complete it. It started in 2021 with the call of IPCI hydrogen. We didn't, at the time, unfortunately, the European Commission didn't believe in our project. They thought that it was small and it was not connected with the European market. That could be true, but at the same time, you also have to support the periphery. You have to support the regions, not only the central market. But we have proven that it was not necessary to go only through IPCI. We followed what is called the procedure of state aid approval that was individual for our project, and we managed to clean it after having changed 4 different ministers in the Ministry of Environment and Energy in our country, and also having to change 2 or 3 times the project portfolio, because in the beginning we had planned a 10 megawatts electrolyzer, and we ended up with a 50 megawatts electrolyzer. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will be really happy to contribute to the discussion about how Cyprus could gain from our experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hadjifodis. Just a reminder, all presentations will be uploaded to the microsite of the conference, and the link will be shared to you through email. So, we now move to our round table discussion, moderated by Professor Andreas Poulikas. So, please join the discussion. Professor Periklis Pilidis, Dr. Nikolaos Limberopoulos, Mr. Konstantinos Hadjifodis, and we have 2 great additions, Mr. Jens Wolf, CEO of Newman & Esser, and Mr. Paul McCormack, CEO of Hydrogen Ireland. Welcome to Cyprus.
Well, this is the last session of our today's conference. I'm pleased to welcome you to all this interesting roundtable discussion dealing with a very important topic regarding Cyprus strategies for green hydrogen. This topic will be expanded during the discussion by our distinguished panelists. The duration of the panel is for 60 minutes. Of course, if we have a lot of interest, we will expand. As a start, I have a general question before I give the floor to the audience, to all panelists, and I would like to hear your views. The question is very simple. Considering the current landscape for green hydrogen in Cyprus, what do you see as the most critical strategies or challenges in advancing a hydrogen economy for the island of Cyprus? Paul, would you like to start?
Yep. Thank you. That's better. Thank you very much indeed. When you mention the word landscape, straight away you think of the geographic landscape, the financial landscape, and also the political landscape. On all of them. Yeah. But coming from an island on the west of Europe to an island on the east of Europe, the landscapes are much the same. We are not connected to Europe. In Ireland, we're an island of Europe. You spoke earlier in the last presentation. Europe sometimes makes the mistake of concentrating on the middle and ignoring the periphery. And that's the opportunity for Ireland and for Cyprus to work together to discover where the opportunities in the landscapes and use those opportunities to develop clean economies, green economies, and become energy providers to Europe. The real opportunity comes next year when the spotlight of Europe is on Cyprus for the first 6 months and on Ireland for the next 6 months, when we assume the presidency of the EU. That's the real opportunity for Cyprus and for Ireland to work as a team, to take the challenge from the centre and turn the spotlight to the periphery, to show where solar to hydrogen has a real opportunity in the Mediterranean and where wind to hydrogen has a real opportunity in Ireland to provide energy for Europe. And the real opportunity is Germany and Europe need energy to replace the fossil fuels, to replace all of the eggs they put in Putin's basket, and then when he invaded Ukraine, the basket, the bottom fell out of it. So how does Cyprus and Ireland work in partnership to develop concepts and ideas to provide clean energy, be it hydrogen, ammonia or methanol, to meet the energy demands of Europe and become part of the energy supply chain, to position ourselves not in the geographical periphery, but at the economic centre and the energy centre of Europe, and meet the challenges where we would have an increase in wind to hydrogen, you would have an increase in solar to hydrogen, to export those at a cost to Europe, and as was said in previous presentations this morning, how we utilise the mechanisms of European funding to uncover those opportunities and to make sure that whilst the journey it will be challenging, to make sure that the risk is not carried by all of the people in Cyprus or Ireland, but the risk is shared because the reward will be shared. And that's how the landscape is how do we create a level playing field in what is an uneven marketplace at the minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Jens, would you like to continue, please?
Of course. Thank you so much, and I fully agree basically that the focus is sometimes very center-heavy in Europe, and that we are often, I come from Germany, try to extrapolate from what's good in the middle is good for everybody, which is not, so to pick up the ball from there. But what I see basically here is you have a big advantage as an island, because when you are conducting an energy transition, you will, of this complexity and of this magnitude as we need to do it, you will have to do it spot by spot. You will start to build innovation, incubation islands, which you then in the long run connect. And you have the experience in running an isolated and insulated, to put it in the literal sense, grid from which everybody can profit. And you will see that most of the off-takers who are now going to renewable energy or bigger off-takes in industrial, especially also in data center applications, are running their units very often off-grid, because grid costs are A, very expensive, and B, if you want to connect a 100 or 200 megawatt data center, this is almost impossible everywhere. So you have to build your own renewables, you have to build your own scalable storage, and we're talking about storage, energy storages far exceeding what can realistically be done with batteries. So you need to switch to molecules, and that's where hydrogen comes exactly into play. So be proud here what you can do. You have a knowledge advantage of operating an island. You also know what it is that you want to be basically self-sustained, because you also have perhaps neighbors who don't want to use perhaps energy also as a weapon, like basically when Central Europe also had its Turkey Thanksgiving moment, pun intended. So basically, what we have exactly there is when everybody, as Paul perfectly said, when you put all eggs in one basket, don't fall down the stairs. And it was very slippery in February 22. That's what we saw then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. Professor, please, your contribution, please.
Well, if we look at, I think, the current political landscape, we have all agreed, there is the emphasis currently of all environmental matters. I personally believe the logic of the environment is incontrovertible, and we should be looking at this, we can call it the emphasis, as an opportunity, to prepare for the time when the next logical way is going to start debating again. And something that was touched, by Dr. Limberopoulos is, a very, an industry that is not so mature at the moment is the seawater electrolysis. I think this is a golden opportunity for Cyprus to shine, because you are not particularly major players in this area. There is an interest, but hydrogen is intimately linked with water, and in many parts of the world there is a scarcity of water. So I found particularly attractive this comment from Dr. Limberopoulos on the investments in seawater electrolysis. It is difficult, and this is where the attraction may be. Part of the difficulty also offers new opportunities, commercial opportunities, to sell some of these byproducts of the seawater electrolysis, not just the pure water that the hydrogen systems will require.
Thank you, Pericles. Konstantinos. Thank you very much.
To begin with, in Greece, we don't have a strategy on hydrogen. In Cyprus, you do have. But, yeah, I think that what makes, the difference is the vision. So, in our case, the private sector has the vision to move forward, while obviously the scale is different in Cyprus, but the vision is not enough. So, we have a big similarity, no heavy industry. If you see how hydrogen develops in Germany, they have the steel sector. You build a hydrogen production unit next to a steel factory, and then you can also sell some hydrogen for buses, because alone buses do not build a business case. So the other thing that we are really, I think, have in common is curtailment. And in my mind, and I'm really the less knowledgeable here on electricity, on hydrogen, I'm a lawyer, I was the worst student in my classroom in chemistry, but nevertheless, I understand that in Greece currently, there are many days that during, hot, windy days, the production of electricity by renewables has a negative price. And why couldn't we use this opportunity to store it and use it when there is no sun or there is no wind? This is simplistic. Of course, I know that there are many, different things that you have to coordinate technically and regulatory, but nevertheless, for sure, there is an opportunity. And in Greece, we have something moreover, that is the network charges. That in case that you want to use green electricity from the network, and this is through PPA, and Europe accepts that for the next couple of years for the early movers, you still have to pay the same price for electricity like you are a normal consumer. And since you are a green consumer and you are producing something green, we really believe that you should avoid these network charges. And you may know that 70 and plus percent of the LCOH of hydrogen, of levelized cost of hydrogen, is electricity. If the price of electricity would fall from, I don't know, now it is 60, 70 euro per megawatt to 30, this directly have an impact on the price of the end product. This is, again, simplistic, but it is a part of the solution. And the last point I want to raise is something that we forget. Europe forgot it when it was planning the Green Deal. It's the issue of energy security. We woke up a day when Russia invaded Ukraine that we understood that we're going to have a problem, a serious problem. And it was governments of Central Europe that they were advising people to get warm clothes because they wouldn't have gas for their heat. So, in my view, the very, very basic benefit of a hydrogen production is that you do it locally with your own resources. You just need water and you need wind and sun. Now, about water, there's no obviously water resources, especially for our area, is an issue. Greece is getting really red regarding water resources, but in our refinery, we use desalination, and we're going to use water from sea to use it in our electrolyzer. So there are solutions, and in my view, what we should look again is energy security and energy resilience. And hydrogen could play a really major part of the solution.
Thank you, Konstantinos. I left Dr. Eleuteropoulos on purpose. Last. Nikos, within your comment, can you please also comment on which would be suitable frameworks for funding either research or infrastructure on green hydrogen?
Right, yeah. The European scale, it would be the frameworks that open once a year by Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. I think those would be suitable for Cyprus to try and eventually establish a hydrogen valley, which would really be the nucleus from which you could expand. I think that already such a project has been sort of secured, kind of, but I think that would be suitable. Then it would be the CEF framework for larger scale, perhaps. I'm not really aware of national frameworks that would be suitable to support research and demonstration projects. But this would be an area of importance. Training the engineers, the technicians in Cyprus, the first responders, to be able to have the local knowledge on these technologies. And I already mentioned some of the topics that I think are relative to perhaps place emphasis, the valley, the seawater electrolysis, hydrogen production from municipal waste. Another topic which I haven't talked about is geological storage of hydrogen. Does Cyprus have the geological structures like salt caverns where you could do seasonal storage of hydrogen? And what about this new trend which we were aware of at the JEU but we haven't yet supported, the natural hydrogen? Has Cyprus looked whether there is such potential underground? These could be perhaps areas of interest, and exploiting areas where you already have a head start. I know very well hydrogen storage and hydrogen compression through metal hydrides. There is local expertise which is at European level, state-of-the-art knowledge and facilities. I was invited yesterday to visit the high store facilities. You know, there is plenty of stuff there to support the local researchers and familiarize themselves and further improve knowledge.
Yes, can I go?
Yes, thank you. Yes, please.
So something pertinent to what Dr. Υδρογόνου was asking.
So a clarification, first of all, we didn't manage to get anything on the valleys. There was 2 attempts made on hydrogen valleys, but they are failing, both of them. We didn't reach the mark. The only project that we have funded by the European Union is through Innovation Fund, so it's not out of the valleys. So that's the one clarification. The question that I had is, why would you be interested in storage, especially caverns in Cyprus?
This would be the only way to think of seasonal storage. So using the excess solar energy over the summer periods to be able to cover base load needs that you would have throughout the year in an industrial case. In case you would have access to a natural gas pipeline that would be transporting natural gas from one region of southeast Mediterranean to another, then you could indeed inject there. You wouldn't need the storage unless you want to use it for Cyprus itself.
Well, certainly what I would say is that we have such a great need for hydrogen in Cyprus, it is to be used in mobility, that I don't think we should be even considering or contemplating at this stage matters of export or even reuse for electricity, because again we have abundance of electricity, renewable electricity that we are throwing away all the time. So the idea is to use all this curtailed electricity, turn it into hydrogen, turn it into other form of energy, which is kinetic energy, which is transportation. And then one question that I have for Professor Pirilis. It's very interesting, your idea of the offshore, extremely interesting. I think it makes a lot of sense for Cyprus, though I don't really share the scare that is being put forward all the time about the lack of water. What we're going to use in our project is going to be recycled water from the waste treatment plant. It's circular and it's very ecological, I would say. So my question, but definitely there is a great role to play on desalinated water, because there's no doubt that at the end of the day we're going to go towards desalination if we're going to go to huge volumes, especially if we're going to put in pipelines, which eventually would be done in Cyprus, hopefully not in the distant future, but very near future. How do you connect, and what sort of electricity, what is your electricity supply on your offshore plant? Yeah. Your offshore plant of producing hydrogen. I mean, you showed one last slide where you have about 1 kilometer in the sea using seawater.
Yes, the slide I presented was an offshore nuclear plant producing electricity. That was the slide. So that was a source of electricity that, to protect from proliferation, to protect from tsunamis, to protect from earthquakes, was based on a submersible. So that was a 1 gigawatt electrical production plant, nuclear.
You also have a slide right at the end where you have a platform producing hydrogen.
That was in my presentation.
Sorry.
There was this barge where there was a
Apologies.
offshore electrolyzer. So maybe it was this you're referring to. And your question was...
My question is, what is your electricity supply?
It's again offshore wind for the case of Ostend.
So a dedicated unit?
Well, this is grid connected. Okay, there is an electricity cable.
Well, it's not a dedicated grid, it's a grid connected.
It's grid connected. It's not standalone.
Okay, big difference. Yeah.
Because the novelty there is getting an electrolyzer in such a corrosive environment and try to do thermal water desalination, exporting hydrogen through pipelines to shore. Well, this is where the innovation lies, rather than integrating with a wind turbine. Okay, the floor. If I could just for 2 seconds answer the question. That's one of the problems that we in Ireland have and you in Cyprus have, is we look at dedicated wind farms just for an electrolyzer. That doesn't happen. It cannot happen. That's why in Ireland we have a curtailment crisis. 2 years ago, there's enough energy lost, 1.2 terawatt hours of renewable energy lost. That's sufficient when you convert that to hydrogen 70%, sufficient to power 1,000 buses for 2 years. So the entire national bus fleet in Ireland could be run for 2 years in hydrogen with the energy that's lost. And picking up on your point, also Constantinos, is that energy is already paid for. So that's energy that we, the taxpayers in Ireland, pay for, is curtailed, it's lost. But the EU legislation says it cannot be used as green hydrogen because it's not a dedicated wind farm and the delegated acts. And that's the challenge that we face when we challenge through Hydrogen Europe with Ursula von der Leyen, is we need more flexibility in EU legislation. As an island nation, we don't have the connectivity. We cannot export power to different nations. So therefore, we need a change or agility in the interpretation so that if you're grid connected, you can have blue hydrogen or green hydrogen, whatever you want to call it, but if it's renewables, it's green, and use blockchain to follow the pathway. So therefore, you must keep your electrolyzer on all the time. The electrolyzer, Jens will tell you that. Switching electrolyzers on and off causes mechanical damage, chemical damage, and electrical damage, and shortens the lifespan of the electrolyzer. We come from an old agricultural country, as does Cyprus. When we grew up in the 1960s, you started the tractor in the morning, you didn't stop it until the evening. You didn't turn it on and off because there was no battery. You had to push it. It's simple mechanics. Turn your electrolyzer on and keep it running, either through grid or through renewables, and optimize the electrolyzer. Make the electrolyzer part of the system. So therefore you have systems integration, not electrolyzer in isolation. And that's, as an island nation, those are the challenges and the opportunities we can face.
Perhaps if you allow me to also add to these things. So perhaps because some points were raised, which I sometimes hear, and I heard them quite a long time ago, and I want to just put some points a little bit into perspective. Saltwater electrolysis is not really needed, to be honest, because seawater desalination is super cheap. It doesn't cost much money, and it changes your energy balance from 55 to 56 kilowatt hours per kilogram of produced hydrogen. As an engineer operating stuff, I never put salt water in a system when I don't need it really there, because it will lead to clogging, fouling, everything, so the units will not run. They will run at a much lower efficiency. So keep your water clean as at home, and then you're safe. Talking about the points what you had, to also perhaps get the curve more to more imminent topics. Yes, there will be in the future, very likely in the North Sea, there will be some almost fully dedicated wind parks, perhaps for an electrolyzer production. That will be as a strategic reserve to be a little bit more resilient there. That will be. But it will not be in the Mediterranean, very unlikely, because the wind conditions here are not favorable enough, and we have other potential here, so what we can do. But focusing a little bit more on what can we do here and now, because otherwise we always are chasing a pie in the sky, which is nice, but very often for our brains a good excuse not to do something now, because in the future it might be even more glorious. Let's do something now. And I give you one of the few good examples I can give from Germany is from the 1990s, when we had the 100,000 roof initiative. That was for photovoltaics. Those who were in the energy business know that very well. And that happened that we created a positive broken window theory. Because on the roofs, we put the solar, the PV sets. And the neighbors asked the other neighbor, what do you have there? What, you get money for that? How much money do you get per kilowatt hour? And with that was basically the incubation point where the PV mania started. We lost that then big time to China. That's the other part of the story, but it's not bad, because China was the perfect production site for that. And only with the Chinese production, we were able to basically reduce the cost of a photovoltaic plant, a complete plant, by factor 50, something like that, from the early 2000s to now. So that means photovoltaic power is dirt cheap. Then comes wind power, and then only come the other things, because the other things, what I see there, they all need fuel. And also, I saw the nuclear vision you saw there, which I find a bit, let's say, unresting when I see a nuclear power plant for Libya. I'm not so much into that, sorry for that. But don't forget who controls the nuclear fuel. It's the same guys who controlled the natural gas which was going into Europe from the east. Because 60% of the nuclear companies, the uranium mines, belong either to Russia or to China. So it's perhaps not a good idea to replace one evil with the other. So, yeah, Australia is there as well, but it's a long way to Tipperary, not only for him, but also from there. So, when you want to control the seas and secure the supply, I'm a captain in the German, was a captain in the German military. I know a little bit about strategic sourcing there. Don't forget the logistics about that. And Australia is also, it's 35 million people, and they are also very far away from us, but very close to other powers in the Asian region. But let's not get too political. What I want to see, basically, and I want to make a strong initiative for that, is let's build something here on Cyprus. We are chasing a project here on this beautiful island since 21, right? That's when we are sitting here together. We applied for European innovation funding, got that granted. Then the next step was, it took us roughly 1 year to get the fire department convinced, 2 years. Yeah? Just the fire department, and another year for all other stuff.
2 years.
2 years, exactly, yeah. And then basically what people are looking at is then, the buses, they might be too hard to get. I'm not really convinced if I need the buses. At the same time, seeing that the existing battery buses are suitable for some of the routes, but many routes cannot be serviced with the battery buses, especially when it's hot. You don't want the tourists to be all sweaty when they come out. So that's the long story. And then we have to make ourselves fair also in cost comparison. And then I will stop my monologue. Because we are never comparing apples with apples. We are always comparing the fuel cost with the total cost for renewables. And we never put the total cost of fossil fuels into the play, with all the environmental damage, the cost for climate protection, desertification, and so on, what it all entails. So we have to make sure that we compare apples with apples, and not just a liter of diesel with a kilogram of hydrogen, or with a 30 kilowatt hour battery capacity you put somewhere. And this is the thing that we have to look at. And to round it off a little bit, it is for us, we have to change our mindset. Normally we are always used that when something new comes, it's directly better. iPhone 17 is already better than iPhone 16. And so on and so on. And the first time we had to basically change our mindset there a little bit was with the battery vehicles. When all of a sudden you had to have a practical range of 80 kilometers, then 120, now 150, 200, 300 kilometers. And there was a lack of comfort because we got used to refueling our car with diesel and with good clean exhaust values, sometimes not so clean, we would drive 1,000 kilometers. And this is, now we have to make some compromises and adapt. And this is exactly what it is. But I can also tell you about the success story. The first car, which was built in my beautiful German home country, it was slower than a horse, weaker than a horse, and less reliable than a horse. But in the long run, it prevails. And this is exactly the same thing. Open your mind and don't be basically so over-demanding that everything automatically has to be great directly. But one thing I can tell you, we're building hydrogen compressors now for more than a century, and this is already proven technology. There is some unknowns, there's some unknowns, but there's also a lot of well-knowns in the H2 economy. And let's bring it into reality, build it and do it and show some enthusiasm and entrepreneurship like you are also doing, Marcus. Thank you for that.
One thing, if I could add, Nicholas, you showed the Hydrogen Valley's funded. The Shamrock Hydrogen Valley has a Greek partner. He's in the room. We're supposed to meet him this morning. MAP is a partner in the Irish Shamrock Valley. So there is partnerships there we can build on. We're not starting from ground zero. We're starting with the experience of people that have been working in it and different projects. And it's about sharing of those ideas and building upon that.
Okay, the floor is open for questions from the audience. I think we can take 3 or 4 questions before we conclude. Please.
5, 6.
So, as you said before, in order to produce hydrogen, you need a market. And it seems that in Cyprus, the market for the use of hydrogen is limited. But what I'm going to suggest, and I want the opinion of the speakers, is maybe we can use the hydrogen in order to help, the emissions. Electricity Authority and the cement factory are the main emissions sources in Cyprus, and Cyprus had paid more than 1 billion of euros for the emissions. If you think Cyprus is budget is only 13 billions, so it's a large amount we pay. Could we use the hydrogen and get the emissions and produce methane, which methane can be stored and distributed in the houses, and because there is a demand for methane in Cyprus. Maybe it's an expensive solution, but yes, it replaced the money that we pay for the emissions from the authorities.
Thank you. So the question is about methanation using hydrogen and the CO2 emissions.
It is definitely technologically possible, methanation of hydrogen. However, there is no natural gas network currently in Cyprus. So you would need to establish this as well. But the other sectors you mentioned, the cement industry, there indeed you could reduce some of the emissions by displacing some of the fuel that is currently used for cement production. And for the electricity sector, indeed, you could store renewable energy in the form of hydrogen and then use it back to produce, again, electricity. But yeah, there are efficiencies and costs involved in all this to be assessed.
Sorry, I will not understood methane, bottle methane, because now it is used in Cyprus. Bottle methane.
Perhaps.
There is a market for it.
No, it's not methane. It's normally it is LPG, which is bottled propane. Exactly. There's often the confusion. But to come to that, perhaps what you have said is what can we use hydrogen for? Yes, transportation is the obvious thing because it's there and there is an offtake and needs some commitment. Cement industry, definitely. Then what one could think, of course, about making green ammonia and for fertilizer here, because fertility is also good on the ground, the soil enhancement to do it like that, and then when more grows, you also buy more CO2. The thing what you just mentioned is when you are basically, you have to be careful when you're taking the hydrogen and then use CO2 depending from which sources you use it, and then you use the methane again, then again you're emitting CO2. So then it's basically, it's in the best case, it's a zero sum game, but mostly it's even worse. So what you could do, of course, is from biogas to biomethane upgrade plants to take the CO2 But these are all things which are basically requiring more investment, especially in the infrastructure, because as I know, there is no real gas grid on Cyprus itself.
Can I add something?
So if I go back to the start of your question, all nations in Europe, especially Ireland, are facing CO2 fines. Millions upon millions of euros are fines that are building up because we're not meeting our targets. We have asked through the Hydrogen Ireland Association, through the Irish government and through the UK government, because we covered the whole island, is rather than fine the countries, take that money and front load it as grant aid. You all remember in school when you didn't do your homework and you were given lines. It was a punitive damage and it achieved nothing. Fines are also punitive, they achieve nothing. You're going to be fined for CO2 emissions, yet no, you're not fixing the problem. So all it takes is a simple legislative step. Instead of fines in 5 years' time, take that money and put it into grants now and ring-fence the grants for that region. So the fines that Cyprus would face can be turned into EU grants now, which would unblock the supply chain of costs and make sure that the environment is clean. Rather than kicking the can down the road, and look at other ways of using that money to clean the environment. And the offtake, instead of looking at the rest of Europe where they look to decarbonise heavy industry, Cyprus, like Ireland, we don't have a steel industry, we don't have an automotive industry, so therefore we don't have heavy polluters. So instead of looking at hydrogen as an instrument to fix problems, look at it as an instrument to create new opportunities. You mentioned the data centres. Look at the data centre opportunity for that energy if it was stored and used for the intermittency from renewables. And then you create a new industry on the island in the environment that creates high-paid jobs and gives you not just energy security, but data security. And data security is a big thing in the future.
If I may add, I agree with you, but as Jens said earlier on, we have to look at now. You know, these are future plans. So we cannot really focus on future without resolving the present. And if I pick up on what Costa said before, I mean, one of the biggest problems that they have is what we just discussed, off-taking. And they had to really convince the government to get how many buses? 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, 3 at the beginning and 50 afterwards.
Yeah, 50 afterwards. Right? So it's done. Right? But you have the muscle. Yeah, if I noticed before your presentation, I think you got 12 billion turnover. Yeah?
Yeah.
As a group.
No, that's true.
So really, I mean, we cannot really be compared with this. Yeah. So obviously, but I'm going to also go back to, I'll pick up on something else that Jens said before, going back to the 10,000 roofs, all right? So it was before even the feed-in prices, before the European Union enacted this tool, right? This mechanism of promoting the renewable energy sources in Europe, which if it wasn't for the feed-in prices, it would never have picked up, never, ever. There's no doubt about that. So when it was done in 2000, it was in 2000, right? I remember very well. So it was the 10,000 roofs in Germany, which really started the solar, the photovoltaic revolution in Europe. That's what really, that was the gist. So, and I would also go to something else that it was on the network that it was discussed. Okay, I'm sorry about that, but it's quite a point on the off-taking. Something that the ambassador of India mentioned before, and it was picked up again by Yorgo, and it was highlighted, right? That in India, they decided last year they're going to create a hydrogen industry. What did they do? They went out and they made tenders. So the government is the off-taker. The government decided that it's going to make an industry with hydrogen. This is the bold, actions that you need to take if you're going to take it further. Or some kind of a feed-in price, mechanism. These are the ways to make it happen. Otherwise, we're just going to be going around in circles.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes. Mike, we're going to use the oxygen in the refinery. So this reduces the cost of buying oxygen from outside. We're going to use the heat of the electrolyzer in the future to generate power. So, and also we're going to use the existing infrastructure for desalination, for the use of water. So we all have it there, and this is how this thing is making sense economically wise. And to add to something that is related to the funding side, you may hear that in total, I mean, what we have secured as funding is huge. It's about 130 million euros for what we are doing in our refinery. But there is OPEX, meaning that once you build it, and the best example I can give you is the hydrogen fueling station, that it costed about 4 million euros. We got half of it, 1.5 million by connecting your facility, and the rest it was our own funding. As I told you, actually you had 3 times refueled cars that they came from abroad. But we have people there working. We need to regularly testify the operationality of the infrastructure. We have to get every year inspection, and also, to bring the safety certificates. And this is cost. And this is cost that we are paying additionally, in addition of the 2.5 million that we throw there. And this is just to say that we do that because we are motor oil. We want to be the first. We want to open this, new path. I also like to say it's not like the nicest way to put it, but the discussion about the chicken and the egg. Now we play the chicken. We are the chicken, but we are waiting for the eggs. But again, it's a matter of scale, and it's also a matter of synchronization. Currently, the debate in our part of Europe is LNG. And also the debate on European environment about the hydrogen project is, getting from hope to hype. And the hype is ending. And now it's a reality check to see, we had, I don't know how many projects in Europe for production of hydrogen, and many of them, they proved to be, they didn't have a business case. I remember that when we went out to electrolyzer manufacturers back in 2021, they were telling us, come in 3 years, because your project is too small. We have projects of 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts, 300 megawatts. Now, they're coming hitting our door, asking if you have another project of 20, 30, 50 megawatts. So, again, this is an opportunity because prices are cheaper now to invest compared to 3 years ago. So it's a matter of, being there, having the project ready, and wait for the opportunity. I mean, this is what we do we have a plan of 5-10 years to see if this is gonna run, but we also have more opportunities, and again, the ability to incorporate this loss in our bigger operation.
Okay, yes. Before we continue, let's take a couple of questions from the audience, and then we can answer all together. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. I am Dr. Panagiotis, Senior Research Fellow at the Cyprus Center for European and International Affairs. Thank you to all this great, excellent panel of experts, and of course Professor Polikas for organizing it. As a non-expert, I would like to ask a more general question. If the Cyprus electricity demand can be satisfied fully by hydrogen production and renewables by 2030 or thereabouts, is the Grey Sea Interconnector project justified, and is its high investment cost justified economically compared to hydrogen production? Thank you very much. I'm Chris, I'm a professor here at Frederick University. Until we discover the best renewable fuel, whether this is methanol or ammonia for any reason, and until we probably have to redesign our machines, internal combustion engines for the shipping industry, and these kind of things, probably there are some things, simple things that we can do for the existing internal combustion engines, for example. There are right now thousands of ships using gas or diesel or heavy fuel, and if we save some fuel, we save some carbon dioxide emissions, isn't it? So there is a way to increase the efficiency of such machines, which means to save fuels, by just introducing a small amount of hydrogen in the combustion chamber. And we don't do that. And we have the technology to do it. So until we get to 2050 and get rid of all of the fossil fuels or whatever, we should use simple ways to save fuel and emit less carbon dioxide. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Professor Christodoulou. Professor Friedrich?
Yes, on your more recent question, I'm more familiar with gas turbine engines. And in gas turbines, you do find that it's now the interest of introducing hydrogen along with the natural gas that is typically fired on these machines. What we find is there is a limit of how much can be done in a gas turbine that produces electricity, and this limit is related to the amount of nitrogen oxides that are produced, because the flame characteristics in the combustor are going to change. But depending on the machine, there is the scope in some cases for some significant hydrogen addition, and the manufacturers are already reacting to that with the new designs.
I think internal combustion engine things are easier. We emit less and
Perhaps to add to your question, sorry, then perhaps you can go to the more Cypriotic topic, of which I will stay out, of course. Perhaps to answer your question, for the internal combustion engines, especially for the bigger engines, diesels for trucks, but even bigger. There is a company, for example, in Belgium, which I know the name of, CMB Tech, but there's also others around who basically do the following. They reduce the amount of diesel which you put in, and they use the diesel a little bit like a spark plug function. Yeah? You have diesel, stratified injection, then you have burning zones in there, and in the intake air, that's where you mix the hydrogen in. That's quite simple to do, and they are saving something between, they claim up to 90% of CO2. Let's take a pinch of salt with that, but let's say we can save 50, 60, perhaps even 70% of CO2, which is not bad. The idea is perfect. And unfortunately, now comes the but. You need the hydrogen infrastructure to provide it, to store it, to bunker the fuels at the shipyards, and so on. And this is exactly what is currently missing, what we are seeing there. And that's why it takes longer. Then, because we are also providing fuel gas compressors for LNG-powered ships, we also are doing now studies for ammonia directly as a fuel. You will see that the energy density, unfortunately, volumetric-wise, is quite low. So with a purely ammonia-run ship, if we would just replace the current tank, you can only make 1/3 of the range for a big container ship. And that would basically lead to a completely necessity of restructuring the vessel operation and so on. There's, of course, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. You can work on more efficiency by air lubrication, setting in kites and sails on container ships. All these things are being looked at. So in the long term, the idea, I think, is good, but to build up this infrastructure for the hydrogen bunkering is, unfortunately, it has to be done, very likely, but it's still a long way to go.
You don't really need to store any hydrogen on board. You just produce it at the time that you need it. So you don't need big electrolyzers, you don't need to separate oxygen and hydrogen. You just put the
mixture, the stoichiometric mixture of hydrogen and oxygen into the air intake of the machine. It's so simple. You don't need to store any hydrogen on board. You can produce it on board.
Yeah, of course, but how do you, from which means do you want to produce it on board?
By this electrolyzer, alkaline electrolyzer, a small
And where do you take the...
small amount.
Maybe you can continue this discussion during lunch. Yes, Paul, please.
If I could, JCB, not too far from yourselves in Cranfield, have developed a hydrogen engine for their diggers on their trucks. So it's not making massive steps overnight, it's small incremental steps. We use a phrase in the GenCom project 10 years ago, hydrogen is not a silver bullet, it is silver buckshot. It will have different applications in different parts of the world and different success, and it's how we achieve that. If you look at Caterpillar are developing generator sets in India that are hydrogen ready. Bosch are producing turbines that are hydrogen ready. So it's not about achieving it overnight, because that was the hydrogen bubble that Yorgo showed in the Gartner curve. When all the double glazing salesmen, the snake oil salesmen suddenly thought, we're going to get rich quick here in hydrogen and make our money. So they created that bubble that we're now at the bottom of. We're now in that period of reality where projects such as here struggle to get recognition because of the hype that was there, that hype to hope step. We're now beyond the hype and the hope, we're in reality where it takes money. When we developed the GenCom project, it was the electrolyzer from a wind farm in Ireland. It was not so much a chicken and egg, it was an ostrich and egg. A bigger problem but a bigger solution. But we were able to look at other funding mechanisms, and now there are 25 hydrogen buses in Northern Ireland running on hydrogen. Now, it doesn't mean they're cheap, but they show that it's possible. And the pain of cost is that initial pain, the pain of childbirth of the first project. That is there to demonstrate that, but it is achievable. And the reality is, if there are costs there have to be mechanisms to address that. And the opportunity is, in January 2026, when the presidency of the EU is here in Cyprus, you set the rules. Take advantage of that.
Thank you, Paul. So before we conclude, we still have an answered question concerning the GSA. If anyone would like to... Okay. So, yes,
there is an interconnection project between Ireland and France. And it is humongous expensive. But it's going in... But it's going in objection to hydrogen. Because France have the nuclear power, so they would have excess nuclear power. And that's the challenge that we are in and you're in too. We're not in competition with electric. And we need to change our mindsets. The only competition is when you import fossil fuel, the money leaves the economy. How do we create a circular economy that every €10 you spend in electricity in Cyprus stays in Cyprus? Doesn't go to Saudi Arabia or to Oman or to some oil company. Because Cyprus is the same as Ireland. When we go home tonight to make our dinner, we provide the food, but somebody else is cooking our dinner. And that's the reality. If they take away the fuel, as happened with Putin, you were eating cold dinners. And that's what we're facing further down the line, because the Putin invasion of Ukraine was a wake-up call. We haven't responded to that. And my dear mother used to say, in every crisis there is opportunity. Germany has an energy crisis. That is Ireland's opportunity and Cyprus' opportunity to help them address that crisis.
Thank you. So, please.
Hello. Thank you for such an interesting morning so far. I'm Dimitra Panomidou. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer of Papaelinas Group, dealing with distribution of cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and some food and consuming products. Actually, I would like to ask, what regulatory barriers may limit the hydrogen development, and how a national strategy adapt to supporting this? Thank you.
If we look at the barriers that we've talked about already, where the agility of the delegated acts isn't there. You cannot have on an island nation such as Island of Cyprus a dedicated wind farm to an electrolyser and run the electrolyser all the time. So there has to be agility in the playing field to recognise different nations, different geographies, different politics. That's one of the obstacles. Another obstacle is you have one side of Europe looking at PFAS, the plastics, and the people that manufacture PEM electrolysers trying to balance that. We cannot compete with China with one hand tied behind our back. And that is currently what we're doing. If Europe wishes to create a greater economy and a greater competitiveness, you have to have the freedom for local decisions at international level. So that wind farms and solar in Cyprus can combine with bio and with grid to keep the electrolyser 24/7. So suddenly your OPEX cost comes down. And it is OPEX is the biggest part of your hydrogen. CAPEX is there, but the OPEX, the operating costs, and we need to get behind the meter pricing, off-grid pricing, and a reality check. Those are the legislation decisions made in Brussels that affect us in Dublin, that affect you in Nicosia, that we have not got enough voice in. You need to have a voice to say, right, that's okay for Brussels, where your population density is 30 million, 40 million. But in an island like Ireland, where it's 7 million, or here in Cyprus, 1.2 million, how do we get to that level to make it economically viable and feasible? There's a quote from our conference 2 weeks ago, and I'll give you the quote, give you 2 seconds. We have a duty of hope, a moral and ethical duty, to address the climate change, but also to look after energy security, data security, and future generations. If we don't do that, we're kicking the can down the road and still trying to compete with China and with Trump with one hand tied behind your back.
And perhaps to add one thing, sorry for that. What is it all about? We are all, most of us at least, are business people. So what is making a successful project is basically that you can produce something and sell it at a higher cost while it's still attractive to the customer. So in the long run, what you need to find a customer needs to have investment security. Yeah? If I now invest in a bus or a truck fleet, I want to know, I don't want that in 2 or 3 years somebody is telling me, the hydrogen you are buying there is no longer considered to be green. You have to pay back now the funding you got, or you will no longer get a tax exempt or a road toll exempt, and so on and so on. So, because when you are embarking on the H2 mobility, just to give that as an example, because it might be of the most relevance here, it's the river of no return. Because a fuel cell electric bus or truck, you cannot reconvert it to an internal combustion engine. Once you put your jeton on that part of the roulette field, that's where it is. You cannot say how does the ball fall, and now I remove my jetons. It will not work. They're gone. And that's what you need. So when you go to a truck operator or a bus operator, that's the first question they will ask you. Do I have the security that for the lifetime of 10 years or whatever a typical bus has, then that I will be able to have green hydrogen there? That the certification rules for what is green and what is not green are not changed, that there is basically a legacy, that when you make that contract, it's still the 10 years, 12 years, I don't know, yeah? But just some investment security, because otherwise nobody will move in these ways. And then they rather pay some taxes on CO2, and they are still hoping that the CO2 fees and taxes, the fines, that they are then postponed again more and again more because we cannot afford it, and so on and so on. And basically we are lying to ourselves then day and night, and living a little bit in the sleepy mode. I just came back from a business delegation in Qatar and in the Emirates. And they told me very clearly, you have very good engineering in Europe, in Germany, but you guys are sleeping. You're so fast asleep, you're so self-complacently sleeping, and the other world is moving so fast. With the other world, I mean east from there, that they are taking it over. Because we take our prosperity for granted. but it's not for granted. It was our prosperity currently was built by hard people doing hard work, creating good times, which creates soft people, and you know what then comes. Yeah? So that's what I mean. Let's get to work and get something done. And the thing is talking about the younger people here in the audience, sorry to say it like that, but it's exactly you. You can see this as a chance. Because when we built the first stuff here in hydrogen on Cyprus, you can be trained on that equipment, and that serves as a multiplier. And this is basically giving you the competence to do it here in Cyprus and to do it in other places for very attractive jobs. Because that's why what you see, countries which don't have, and the skill set you need to run successfully hydrogen plants is often very similar to what you need to run a refinery, because you are dealing with flammable explosive gases and so on. So countries without an oil and gas industry are normally having a little bit a harder time of converting than those who are having it. So it's a bit of a paradox. Normally you would say if you have nothing, it's easier to start from scratch, but without the skill sets, without the aftermarket services in there, the best gas turbine, the best electrolyzer is gone to pieces in a few years. So don't forget the aftermarket. It's also important. And the aftermarket is people. Thank you.
Yes. Take the last question as well, and then we conclude. Please.
Thank you. Just two short questions. First of all, to Mr. Hatzifotis, do you have any plans for hydrogen expansion in Cyprus? And my second question, probably addressing to all the panelists, since you mentioned the issue of bringing the EU periphery into the epicenter of hydrogen policies, do you see any room for entrepreneurial and business development opportunities in the periphery different than applying the existing hydrogen technologies, perhaps R&D and I in hydrogen sector, in manufacturing or being included in the supply chain of the hydrogen projects?
Yeah. Very quickly, we have created as Motor Oil a JV together with PPC, they in Greece. That's our hand to continue the development of green hydrogen market in Greece and abroad. But no, we don't have a plan to build hydrogen infrastructure in Cyprus. We are ready to collaborate and support as much as needed and requested by our friends here. Very quickly, just about the question on regulatory barriers. The European Union is now telling to Mr. Ketonis that either you move by 2027 and you build the infrastructure, otherwise, if you move afterwards, you need to invest in dedicated solar panels or wind, and you will have to prove hourly that we get green energy from wherever you get it, and certified. So it is telling to somebody who is like trying to create a market and find somebody to off-take that you still have not stand up on your own 2 feet and and now you have to jump obstacles. This is insane, and this shows how the Central European, mindset is dealing with the regional development. Now, I take it to national level. When we got funding from Connecting Europe Facility to build our HRS, there were no technical requirements set by the Greek government to build it. We had a Gantt chart, Nikos knows very well what it is. It is the timetable that you have to follow in order to get your money by the end of the project. If you go up beyond the timeline, you lose it. So, we were chasing the Greek government to give us the technical requirements. And in order to be in line with the timetable, we started buying equipment that we were afraid that the technical requirements would come afterwards and tell us that they do not fit. So, these things are there. And I guess you will also have to, to come across it and overcome them. But at the very end, what I just want to say is that, you know, you don't need to be an island to have similar problems. In Greece, although we have, I don't know, 6,000 islands, smaller ones, we are an island because we are disconnected by the main European market. Interconnectors that could connect our electricity production are not still there. Pipeline, in order to get to Germany, it's far away, and it's a pharaonic project. So still, we have the same more or less problems. In my view, what is, you know, the opportunity, and I see it as Greece and Cyprus opportunity, is the new fuels for shipping and aviation, because we can produce them here, and we have also the market here.
Okay, thank you. So, Professor Poliris, but please stay brief because you are running out of time. The lunch is waiting downstairs.
Okay, 1 minute, no more.
No, it's okay, yeah.
It's partially an answer to your question, and also given that we are in a university environment, there are many, many factors that influence regulation. When it comes to new applications of hydrogen, one of them is certification and health and safety. And one thing we are doing now.
They don't understand you.
Oh.
It's on, but you got to far away.
Just close it. Close it.
Okay, actually 2 minutes now.
Okay.
So, there are many, many factors that influence regulation, and in particular, when it comes to new uses of hydrogen, one thing we found, putting a lot of effort in aviation, hydrogen for aviation, is the certification process and health and safety. And the challenge there is such that, we are starting now health and safety research to help influence the level of regulation that is to take place.
Thank you, Bertie.
Try to answer your second question, the gentleman over there, on supporting the extremes of Europe. I'm using the example of hydrogen valleys. When the European Commission came and said, here is 0.2 billion, I want you to support hydrogen valleys, ideally, Commission wanted that every country has at least one valley. But you cannot control this in a competitive framework like the one that we have. Proposals need to compete. We would very much like that eventually this is all distributed like this, but you can't force it. However, there could be an opportunity during the presidency of Cyprus and Ireland to suggest that there could be frameworks specific for the periphery of the Commission on some energy, environmental issues, and hope for the best, because Central European countries will not be happy.
Thank you. Just to say that they should also include the European Hydrogen Bank, because what is happening now is that only 2 or 3, 4 countries have got support from the bank. And this is something that should also be addressed. And this is reality.
Okay, so we can have now 2 contributions from Paul and Yes, and then we conclude. Please.
If I address your question exactly what you said, the hydrogen bank, sometimes we follow EU legislation too rigidly. Portugal has put money into the hydrogen bank, but it can only be used on Portuguese projects. So there are different ways of interpreting EU legislation. Cyprus could put money into the hydrogen bank with the stipulation it must be used in Cyprus. So that's a way of moving legislation around. On your second bit, my life has been spent in innovation. And other opportunities, yes, that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. Because electrolyzers, anodes, cathodes, they're as old as Methuselah. We need new electrolyzers to handle the intermittency of renewables, to handle solar, to handle wind, and the innovation there. We also need to look at systems innovation, where it's not electrolyzer in isolation. Where do electrolyzers sit as part of an overall energy project in energy hubs? We spent the morning talking about hydrogen. You talked about a bit about what we use the oxygen for. If we're getting pure hydrogen out of the electrolyzer, you're also getting pure oxygen. So there's a commercial value there. So their innovation is phenomenal. So and the more we get into this, the better. Because with the Hydrogen Europe event earlier this year, when you're sitting there and there's a speaker from Oman saying they like what Europe's doing because it meets what they can supply to, who's going to certify their hydrogen? We'll pay for it. It's just import substitution. Instead of oil, we'll be taking in a different fuel. Yet no, they're not held by the same restrictions as internal. I was talking at dinner last night and our colleague was talking about planting olive trees. Greek proverb that they use, it's a good Greek proverb in Ireland. It's a wise man that plants trees when he knows he will never be sitting under the shade. Those are the projects we need to develop now for the next generations to come.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps just to finish also on your thought and also the role of the self-proclaimed peripheral states of the European Union. I don't see it like that. Is you are sitting also there at the entry and exit gates of the European Union. Now, this is also a big chance. And by the way, the same rules which you said, which are hindering you, is the same in Germany. They're universally bad. It's not made by the central powers to hinder and block everybody. It's made by people to block everybody. So it's at least democratic then. So sorry to say it like that. But Cyprus has a great opportunity as well, because you can be the mixing link between an energy import vector. And I fully understand your point, Paul. But the European Union realistically will still have to import energy in the net, and it will still be around 50 to 60% what we have to import. But the good chance is that hydrogen production, good hydrogen production potential is distributed much more fairly over the world than hydrocarbons. So the autocracy index per barrel of oil unit of energy is much lower on hydrogen than it is on the real crude stuff, what you get there. So coming to Cyprus itself, what can be a big chance is that they, and you saw the plans is, and I was a bit bemused about building a high voltage line with roughly 30% energy losses from India to Europe. The idea is a little bit strange, so go for molecules over these distances. So this is a clear thing. Build a pipeline, a 48-inch pipeline, you can transport 30 gigawatts of energy in a 48-inch pipeline. So that's what we mean with that. Use the full spectrum, be technology-wise open. What do we have? And all the consequences, what we talked about is when we put ideology above technology. When we said, oh, it all has to be green directly. It all has to be, no, we will only do it with batteries. Remember it, it's exactly the snake oil salesman who was selling you some wonder medicine which cures everything as a panacea. There is no panacea, right? There is no panacea in the world. Perhaps ginseng in Korea, I don't know. But there is no panacea. It has to be always a mix. That's why we have to think openly. We have to also embrace taking grey hydrogen as a starting point to build up an infrastructure with a firm and clear will and obligation to make it bluer, greener, turquoise day by day. And that's how we start with it. But when we, exactly, the turquoise, you have all the colors there, Market. So that's basically my appeal, to be pragmatic and get it on the road before basically we hide behind ideology as an excuse not to do something. And that's why it is Europe as a whole, and it doesn't matter if it's Central Europe or Peripheral Europe, we all have the same problem. That is very clear, and that's why we have to work together. And let's look at how we can make use of it. Italy will be perhaps an import sector, and Spain from Northern Africa. You have a very close connection to Egypt here compared to others, to the let's say the Levante region, to put it in a very, very broad way. So the opportunity here is great, and I already see big Neumann-Esser compressor stations at the hydrogen pipeline running 2048. I hope I will be there for the inauguration. Thank you.
Maggie, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all the gentlemen for their contribution. The deliberation that we had today here was fantastic, and I think it was an extremely good level. If I could sum up, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to European Union that they're not really after us as such. I think they mean well, but I think they're not really correcting all along the way the objective that they have in mind. There's no doubt that they want to produce hydrogen, they want to promote hydrogen, but they started something which they didn't really have the full knowledge. There is obvious obstacles which are coming right now. Somebody, perhaps Konstantinos, he made the example of somebody not walked yet, and they want him to start jumping all the obstacles. And that's exactly what it is. I think, in a way, going back to what Paul is very sort of strongly advocating, is to go and make a case to European Union. And it's not, I agree also with Jens, it's not just on us. I don't think it's on the periphery. I think the Central European countries are also suffering from the same regulations that the European Union put. They want to do something. They need to change their rules, and this is the time now. 5 years later on, when they started the experiment, that these rules are not really functioning. They're not working. They need to change them.
Thank you very much, Makis. I think it's time to conclude, and we can continue the discussion downstairs during lunch. So I would like to thank you all, our distinguished panelists, for sharing their valuable insights on the Cyprus strategy for green hydrogen. Let me thank everyone, the speakers, the participants, and the organizers for contribution to an open and productive dialogue. So the lunch will be served downstairs. I think we are ready to go for lunch. Okay, thank you very much.